However, before she even had the time to get upset, Li Moying had flatly denied the relationship with Mu Rongfei. Huang Yueli subconsciously heaved a sigh of relief as she felt as if the huge rock in her heart was lifted. So, he had no feelings towards the childhood friend whom Li Moying grew up with. Although Li Moying was facing the challenge by his junior brother, he had never once considered to marry his master's daughter. Huang Yueli had not once doubted Li Moying's sincerity, but hearing him say these behind her back, so resolutely standing firm by his intentions, she felt a burst of happiness. But very quickly, the smile on her face froze. That's right, what on earth was she happy about? Whether Li Moying married Mu Rongfei or with whoever else, what concern was it of hers? Anyway, she and Li Moying's marriage was just impossible. Thinking of this, Huang Yueli could feel an obvious disappointment within the depths of her heart. Heavens, was she going mad? She obviously liked Mu Chengying. Why would she be concerned about Li Moying's marriage? Why would she feel disappointed when she heard that he would possibly get married to another person, and feel happy when she heard his confession? Surely she hadn't really fallen for Li Moying already, right? How could this be possible? And how could that be done? Huang Yueli felt that she was on the verge of a breakdown. She suddenly realized that recently she had been numbed by the atmosphere in Celestial Light Academy and had actually subconsciously accepted the setting that she and Li Moying were a pair of fiancé and fiancé. In this academy, and she Li Moying were a couple and was envied by everyone, chased after by masses. That feeling seemed to make her return to her previous life, to those days where she and Mu Chengying were together. This gave Huang Yueli an illusion, as though things should be like this. But now, she suddenly awoke but understood that all these were not correct at all. She and Li Moying shouldn't be like this at all. In the main hall, Li Moying and Jiang Tuxin's conversation was still in progress. Huang Yueli was not in the mood to continue eavesdropping as she left the little courtyard despondently. Unknowingly, she walked towards the profound weapon chambers. Just at the entrance of the profound weapon chambers was a crowd surrounding a purple-dressed young lady. All of them were fighting to gain her attention by showering her with praises. "Senior Sister Li, your armament refining skills are really superb. The profound armament that you refine is a lot better than most first-tier armament masters. You're simply impressive. Isn't that so? Junior Sister Li is the strongest armament refining genius in Celestial Light Academy's last 10 years. Of course she's impressive." 3 days later would be the day where the Armament Guild certifies the promotion of all new armament masters. If Senior Sister Li were to pass the assessment, then you will become the youngest armament master in the entire Celestial Light Academy. I really worship Senior Sister Li. Not only is her family background good, she is also pretty, and moreover, she knows how to refine armaments. She really makes one envious. The scars from the slap on Li Shue's face had long recovered, and at this point of time, she was gorgeously dressed, holding on to a circular fan sitting right in the middle of the crowd, obviously enjoying the crowd's fawning and flattering. Huang Yueli was stunned, not expecting Li Shue to leading such a nourished life. Ever since she and Li Moying's marriage arrangement was exposed, all those students who went against her no longer dared to make trouble for her and had all tucked their tail between their legs, leading a proper life. Even the previous martial arts stage rank number 2's Lu Ziju didn't dare to show himself in front of her. Yet Li Shue seemed to be even more flushed with success. You can also listen on. For a moment, Huang Yueli had some doubts, but very quickly she understood what had happened. Li Shue had fainted from the beating that day and had indeed lost her face terribly. But subsequently, Li Moying appeared, and moreover, when he had admitted his marriage arrangement with Huang Yueli, it was also proven that he was Li Shue's second brother. At that time, both of them were busy flashing off their love, so who would be bothered about Li Shue who had fainted? In this way, Li Shue not only not became a street rat, her social status had also jumped up by 3 levels. She was now the Academy's #1 expert, Li Moying's biological sister, and moreover she had an incomparable, talented and defying sister-in-law. To those who didn't understand the truth, Li Shue's social standing was absolutely not ordinary. Whoever they had to offend, they absolutely cannot offend her. Didn't they saw Yuan family's family head had to bow down to her brother and intentionally tried to get into his good books? Even Yuan Zheyu started to see Li Shuai in a new light. In the past, he had decided to abandon Li Shuai and turned to pursue Huang Yueli instead. But now that he knew Huang Yueli was attached, Li Shuai had turned into young sect master's biological sister. Even a fool would know what to choose. Before he went into closed-door cultivation, he had personally made a trip to Celestial Light Academy and gave a huge gift to Li Shuai as an apology, even making his stand clear that as long as she agreed, he would immediately get engaged to her. Li Shuai was simply overjoyed. She had not expected that the calamitous bearer of ill luck, Huang Yueli, had now brought her good luck. Those childs who often treated her with cold and indifferent look in the past were now kneeling by her feet to gain her attention, whereas the other ordinary students treated her like the academy's princess, raising her up into the skies. During this period, Li Shuai was walking in the air. Fantastic. It was just too fantastic. This day, it was just like any other day where she was surrounded in the middle by a bunch of students who tried to flatter her. Just as she was feeling great, suddenly she heard a voice which she hated in her entire life from her back. Li Shuai, looks like you're mingling quite well, eh? The slaps which I had given you seemed to have totally recovered. Li Shuai instantly turned backwards. You. By Ruoli. Fire seemed to sprout out from the bottom of her eyes. Huang Yueli's lips curled upwards and her expression was filled with ridicule. Isn't it just old me? Li Shuai, aren't you just too impolite? Is this how you talk when you meet your sister-in-law? Upon seeing her face, which was becoming more and more delicate, Li Shuai's heart started to rouse a deep sense of jealousy. If it was the usual times, she would have went right up ahead and quarreled with Huang Yueli. Sister-in-law? Wanted to let her admit that this little slut was her sister-in-law? In her next lifetime maybe. But now. She was helming on to the identity of Li Moying's younger sister so that she could continue to swindle by false pretenses in the academy. Now in front of so many people, if she were to go against Huang Yueli, it would affect her social standing in the academy. If anyone managed to find out that she and Li Moying were, in fact, not very close siblings but was more like enemies, then she was completely finished. She was still hoping to use this opportunity to mislead others to use her identity as Li Moying's seventh sister to get married into one of Sky Cloud City's aristocratic families. With her identity, if she wanted to change her fortune for her lower half of her life to get married to those large families' genius successors, then this would be the best opportunity. Because of this, she would tolerate. Wasn't it just lowering her head to this wretched lass? Li Shuai clenched her teeth and tolerated time and again before bowing down to pay her respect. Second sister-in-law, I haven't seen you for a few days now. You look pretty good. You can also listen on. Li Shuai self-admitted that she had already used her greatest sincerity to bow and bend her knee. But when Huang Yueli heard that, not only did she deny to comment by smiling, she also didn't have any intention to ask her to stand up straight and only let her continue to bow down. Awkwardness filled the entire place. Those students had originally came by to please Li Shuai had their eyes wide open when they saw this scene. Isn't Bai Ruoli Li Shuai's sister-in-law? Why is she treating her in this way, not giving her any face? What happened between the two of them? No idea. Probably they had a tiff. Previous at Yuan residence, both of them were pretty unpleasant, isn't it? But no matter how unpleasant they are with each other, Li Shuai is still senior brother Li's biological sister. The sister and sister-in-law not getting along isn't anything new, as many other families have such a problem as well. Li Shuai's face flushed a shade of red. Of course she knew that Huang Yueli was playing around with her. Huang Yueli and Li Moying and her, Li Shuai, harbored a deep hatred. Now she was using both their names to enjoy being pleased by others. How would Huang Yueli be happy from this? It was apparent that she was here now to get back at her. But Li Shuai couldn't not accept this. Furthermore, she was still holding on to a sliver of hope that because she and Li Moying were really siblings, no matter how bad their relationship was, she could always explain it as the family's internal rife. So she only need to handle Huang Yueli, and when she left, she would be able to find a way to explain this entire matter. Now, she could only follow along with her. Li Shuai bore with it for a little while but still didn't hear Huang Yueli say a single word, so she could only lower her stance. Second sister-in-law, are you still upset over what happened that time at Yuan residence? It wasn't intentional at all. I was worried that Mr. Yuan would say something which would make second brother misunderstand, even if what I said was slightly drastic, but you had also taught me a lesson then, so are you still upset? How about I'll apologize to you again? Huang Yueli sneered. Li Shuai, I have really never seen such a thick-skinned person like you. Do you still treat me as your sister-in-law? You have repeatedly tried to kill me time and again, so who do you think I am? Now you've learnt how to act pitiful. Li Shuai's reaction was instant, as she knew that to meet force with force wasn't practical. Not only did she not have the ability, it would also ascertain that she wasn't on good terms with her second brother and second sister-in-law. Her expression changed as she blinked and her eyes started to moisten, as though she was about to cry anytime soon. Even her voice started to quiver. Second sister-in-law, how could you say that of me? I had already explained before, it's my fault that I don't know how to put it. Even if you don't forgive me, you need not say me till this way, right? After all, I'm your fiancé's sister and in future we will all be one big family, so why must you be so vengeful? When the bystanders saw, they started to shoot sympathetic looks towards Li Shuai. Huang Yueli had always been an absolute powerful and overbearing existence in Celestial Light Academy. No matter if it was in the entrance examinations, martial arts stage battle or even at Yuan Residence's banquet, she had always been stepping on those who challenged her, stepping upwards always. Every time she struck, it would always because she was challenged by others and under the circumstances where she could no longer take it in, then would she retaliate. But in any ordinary person's eyes, they would not think that she was being oppressed before she struck. What they saw was her shocking capability and strong attitude which no one dared to offend. Compared to Li Shuai, whose eyes had turned red, she was an absolute stronghold. This made Li Shuai look extremely pitiful. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli looked on coldly as though she was looking at a clown. One family? Who is one family with you? Shall I ask Li Moying personally if you belong to one family? Li Shuai, I advise you to restrain yourself a little because the truth will be uncovered one day. Today, if those people who are swindled by you were to find out that in Li Moying's eyes, you're not even worthy as a servant, how would they exact their revenge on you? Hearing that, the surrounding students looked at one another in dismay. Surely that can't be true. Could it be that Li Shuai and senior brother Li's relation is not that good? If this was the truth, then won't we be flattering Li Shuai for nothing? If only the flattery was really nothing. If senior brother Li were to get angry over this, then we would really had been tricked. The bystanders' glares turned into suspiciousness and unfriendliness, making Li Shuai start to break out into cold sweat. Her thoughts flew quickly as she clenched her teeth and suddenly stood upright, pointing at Huang Yueli and shouting, "By Ruoli, I've already taken a step back, so don't be too much. My relationship with second brother isn't good all because of you adding on those false accusations. Did you think that you will be able to sow discord between us by doing that? I'm telling you, the both of you aren't married yet. Who knows what changes will take place in future? As for me, I will always be second brother's sister. The same blood is flowing in our bodies, so you have no chance to deviate us." The words she said was put in an intelligent way which was intentionally done to mislead others, thinking that Huang Yueli was a sister-in-law with malicious thoughts. Not seeing eye to eye with her fiancé's sister, she would just then sow discord between the siblings' relationship. This time round, the bystanders started to have a change of heart. That's right, no matter how the siblings were at odds, this was also temporarily. Li Shuai was still senior brother Li's sister and was more reliable than this fiancé. One could change a fiancé, but could a sister be changed? So it was to see that fawning on Li Shuai was not wrong. Li Shuai saw that the public opinion had been turned around by her, and using this chance to strike the iron while it was still hot, she continued, "Sister-in-law, I know that you're jealous of my armament refining innate talent. 3 days later I will be taking part in the Armament Guild certification to become a real armament master. Moreover, I will be able to gain honor points as a reward. I know that sister-in-law had always wanted to obtain honor points to exchange for cultivation method in the 4th level of the scripture depository, but you had not been able to do so. This however made you displeased with me, but it's not my fault. Oh. So the truth is this. This by Ruoli is really too competitive. Li Shuer not only threw a pail of dirty water over, she also reminded everyone that she was a valuable soon-to-be armament master. Furthermore, adding on to say that the conflict the both of them had was all because of Huang Yueli's jealousy. Quite a number of them started to believe her, and this made Li Shuer smile delightfully, giving Huang Yueli a challenging glance. Huang Yueli hadn't displayed much expression and waited for her to finish before cold sneering. Just a first-tier armament master who had yet to be certified, and this already made you delighted to this manner. 18 years old and you're still only at first tier, just based on such horrendous innate talent. In this entire lifetime, you'd probably only reach a 5th-tier armament master standard and your ancestor's grace would be fuming with green smoke. Do I even need to be jealous of someone of your caliber? You. Li Shuer was infuriated by her disdainful tone as she cried out in utter discomfort. What do you know? Do you know how important the existence of a 5th-tier armament master is? It is a VIP which many large families are fighting to employ. How dare you even insult a valuable armament master? You can also listen on. Huang Yueli's glare turned chilly. The person I'm insulting are not armament masters but you, a worthless piece of trash. Moreover, have you forgotten the warning which I told you previously? What? Li Shuer was stunned because she had indeed forgotten, but instinct made her feel danger. Just as she was still in a daze, Huang Yueli's right hand waved as a strong profound energy was unleashed, striking Li Shuer on the chest. In the shocking cries from the bystanders, Li Shuer flew heavily away as a trace of blood flowed down from the corners of her lips. By Ruoli, you actually dare to attack me. Huang Yueli's strike this time wasn't heavy at all, so Li Shuer could still get up as she clutched her chest to complain. Huang Yueli sneered icily, haven't I already taught you this last time? As an armament master, in front of a practitioner whose ability is much higher than yours, you should tuck your tail away and act properly like a person. Don't treat other people's respect towards you as a shameless investment. Looks like you didn't remember my words properly, so as your second sister-in-law, I must teach you properly. Li Shuer was both anxious and angry, and this worsened her internal injury. Her chest hurt like mad and both her eyes saw black as she almost fainted. The bystander students were all tongue-tied when they saw this, as they didn't expected Huang Yueli to strike suddenly. It was until now that they recalled that Huang Yueli was a super genius who was ranked 3rd in the martial arts stage. If she really wanted to hurt anyone, no one else would be able to stop her. Li Shuer grew even more frustrated when she saw their attitudes. Just a quarter of an hour ago, these people were still fawning on her, praising her to the skies as though there was no other talented student in the entire Celestial Light Academy. But now that Huang Yueli stood up, these people's attitudes changed immediately. No, if they confirmed that her relationship with her second brother was not good, then in the future, she would have no way of getting along in Celestial Light Academy. Li Shuer clenched her teeth as she spoke up. By Ruoli, I've remembered the insult you treated me today. Now that second brother isn't here, you dare to be so arrogant towards me. Later when second brother knows how you treat me, he will definitely get even for me. Let's wait and see. Huang Yueli smiled slightly as she was very clear on what Li Shuer was planning. She wanted to mislead these students into thinking that she had a standing in Li Moying's heart so that these people were still willing to fawn on her. Huang Yueli took a meaningful glance at her and was just about to speak. But someone spoke out first. Now that I know this already, who am I going to get even with? Li Shuer, you have a lot of guts to speak to Leah in this way. Looks like I was too courteous to you when I was in South Yu Kingdom, and this had made you dare to treat my woman in such an outrageous way. A deep and bleak man's voice was heard, bearing a visibly sinister and cold intention. Li Shuer's entire body shook as she raised her head unbelievably. Huang Yueli also raised her brows in surprise, and as she looked back, she saw Li Moying's tall and straight body structure, almost totally sticking to the back of her, shielding the sunlight from the top. She pursed her lips, feeling somewhat uneasy. In front of this man, she always seemed so petite, with such a vivid contrast against his tall and lean body. Adding on to the comparison between their abilities, it always made her fell into a weaker position. Furthermore, Li Moying's capability was just a little too strong, right? When did he appear behind her? She actually didn't notice at all. You can also listen on. Upon seeing Li Moying's side view of his handsome but cold face, Li Shuai only felt her entire body turning cold as she started to tremble uncontrollably. Why would Li Moying suddenly appeared here? When did he arrive? Why did it have to be at that precise moment when she was just exaggerating about their sibling relationship that he had to show up? How was she going to cover up this lie now? Senior brother Li actually showed up. Too good looking. This is the first time I'm looking at senior brother Li from such a close distance. He already looks very handsome from afar, and now from close up, he's even more. I'm going to faint. You're the most love-struck idiot. Why don't you even think that senior brother Li's fiancé is just standing by the side? I'm just looking at him only. But now that senior brother Li's fiancé and his biological sister are fighting, how is he going to handle this? He would definitely stand on his sister's side. After all, blood is thicker than water. That might not necessarily be true. Senior brother Li and Bai Ruoli's relationship is said to be very good, so maybe he might listen to junior sister Bai. The bystanders' whispered discussions had echoed into Li Shuai's ears, and this made her even more embarrassed, her forehead drenched in sweat. What's that about blood thicker than water or standing on the sister's side? Only Li Shuai herself knew that this was absolutely not possible. Earlier she had even provoked Huang Yueli so much. Based on how much Li Moying pampered this wretched lass, if he didn't tore her into pieces, it would probably be because of their sibling relationship. Li Moying stared at her icily. Why are you not talking? Are you dumb? Earlier. Weren't you happily exaggerating? Li Shuai kept absolutely silent, so silent that even the surrounding students couldn't bear it any further. Most of them were still standing on Li Shuai's side. After all, they had spent several days trying to win Li Shuai over, and within their inner hearts, they didn't hope that their efforts were wasted, fawning on the wrong party. Junior sister Li, now that senior brother Li is here, quickly tell him what happened earlier. That's right. Bai Ruoli actually started beating you up the minute things didn't fall through. Isn't she such a bully? She even dared to sow discord between your sibling relationship. That's right. She dared to create the rumor that your second brother didn't like you, and even gave you a beating. That's just too much. As Li Moying heard their comments, the cold glint beneath his eyes grew stronger as his gaze swept past all those chatterboxes, making them all shiver and shutting their mouths up effectively. Li Shuai braced herself as she greeted, Sir. Second brother, Li Moying humphed. What second brother? I'm not worthy of your greeting, second brother. Your mother is my enemy who murdered my mother, and your brother even nearly killed me by dumping me into the icy cold snow. If it wasn't because of the instruction which my mother told me before she died, I would have sought your lives long ago. And now you're not tucking your tail behind your back. Do you think I've treated you way too well? No, second brother. When Li Moying blurted these out, those who heard it all bore a shocked expression. No one could have imagined that Li Moying and Li Shuai were not born from the same mother, and from the sound of it, it seemed that their enmity were rather deep. Those present were mostly descendants from Sky Cloud City's large families, and they were often exposed to these sort of aristocratic family feuds, so in their brains, many scenarios were fed into it and they instantly understood what had happened. But following that, they wouldn't help but wished that they could bang their heads onto the walls to kill themselves. They were really too silly. Facing Li Moying's enemy and fawning on her for so many days, thinking that she was some leg which they could hope to hug upon. Now that things have come to this was considered as fawning onto the horse's hooves. At that moment, everyone felt that they were swindled, and the gazes they threw towards Li Shuai were extremely unfriendly. You can also listen on. Li Shuai turned anxious as she felt their gazes turned onto her. She hastily called out, Second brother, this has nothing to do with me. When mother and eldest brother did that, I was only 4 years old and I knew nothing at all. How can you put the sins that they had committed sins onto me? I will draw a clear line with them in future and will not keep in contact with mother and eldest brother. Second brother, I've always been standing on your side. When she said this kind of shameless thing, before Li Moying could say a word, Huang Yueli couldn't take it and wanted to throw up. Li Shuai, I'm almost going to vomit. I've never seen such a shameless person like you before. Have you forgotten the time when your mother and eldest brother tried to harm me in Moying? You've tried several times to kill me, so don't tell me I'm sleepwalking. You've always been on your second brother's side. Haha, obviously it's because you realized that your second brother is powerful enough and your eldest brother has no more use to you, so you casted Morjuan aside, not admitting him now? Do you really think we're all idiots? Li Shuer stared at her furiously as she retorted, it's all your fault. You've always been sowing discord in front of second brother. In actual fact, I've always been helping second brother. I've long despised the way mother and eldest brother does things, but after all they are my biological relatives, so I cannot bear to hurt them. Huang Yueli had hit her right on the spot and she was having a guilty conscience, so she could only use her voice to explain loudly, attempting to confuse the thinking of the bystanders. To tell the truth, Huang Yueli really didn't say anything wrong. She indeed felt that Li Morjuan could not render her any help anymore. When Li Morjuan wasn't injured then, he was already one of the lowest-ranked students among the core disciples, so it was a hopeless case if he wanted to join Celestial Light Sect. But Li Shuer was alone in Skycloud City and without anyone's assistance, she could only follow Li Morjuan as an ally. Now that Li Moying had suddenly appeared, Li Shuer realized that the Crown Prince as compared to her second brother was not even worth mentioning as a dreg. Thinking that she could be as glamorous as she could get, it was all because of her capable brother who was ranked number 1. This kind of glory, she only needed to taste it once and would never want to lose it. So Li Shuer had already planned right from the start that as long as she had a chance, she would grab tightly onto Li Moying, and as for that worthless Li Morjuan, he would become her stepping stone. As long as she was able to get Li Moying to acknowledge her as his seventh sister, she would not hesitate discrediting Li Morjuan at all. The ridicule on Huang Yueli's mouth grew even more obvious. Looks like shamelessness is indeed hereditary. I thought your mother and Li Morjuan were shameless enough, but I had not expected you to surpass them. As compared to you, they really are a role model for morality. You, second sister-in-law, you've really misunderstood me. Why won't you listen to my explanation? Second brother, you will listen to my explanation, right? Li Shuer turned teary eyes as she tried to act pitiful to gain Li Moying's sympathy. Huang Yueli's eyebrows rose as she used her elbow to jab the man standing behind her. Hey, second brother, your little sister is asking you a question. Do you believe her? Li Moying didn't even cast a glance onto Li Shuer as he stretched out his hand and held onto Huang Yueli's waist, bringing her into his embrace. The other hand pinched little cheek. What question are you asking? I'm no idiot, all right? Besides that, I don't have any little sister, I only have a little fiancé. You can also listen on. Li Shuer's face turned ghostly white when she heard that. Looks of sympathy, ridicule and despise shot from all around, which made her so embarrassed that she had no place to hide. She had not expected Li Moying to not have any sentimental feelings and threw her reputation and face entirely onto the ground to step upon. She had originally thought that no matter what, she was Li Moying's biological sister, and as she had not directly harmed Li Moying, he would take into account their sibling relation, but she had not expected. Li Moying lowered his head as he blew a breath onto Huang Yueli's ear. Huang Yueli's ear was extremely sensitive and it instantly flushed red. She indignantly rolled her eyes at him and shoved him. Stop fooling around, there are so many people watching. Quickly settle your excellent sister. Li Moying was extremely unhappy about being shoved aside by his little fox as his face sunk and his icy cold gaze turned towards Li Shuer. Li Shuer, this is the last time I'm warning you. Although my mother had made me vow not to hurt anyone in the Li family that year, but Leah is my bottom line tilde. If I see you saw or do any disrespectful things to Leah, I will absolutely throw that vow aside anytime. By then, don't blame me for not reminding you on this. Li Shuer trembled from shock. In front of an overbearing 7th stage realm practitioner's oppression, both her legs turned to jelly as she could not even breathe. She knew that Li Moying was different from Huang Yueli. Li Moying's blood was cold and he was even more overbearing, even more emotionless and aloof. Furthermore, he absolutely did what he said. So his words were not only empty threats. Yee! What smell is that? It's so stinky. It's from Li Shuer? The smell came from her. Everyone held their noses as they threw a look of despise towards her. Li Shuer lowered her head blankly and suddenly realized a warm sensation in between her legs. Under Li Moying's overbearing oppression, she had unknowingly wet her pant. She shrieked out as she quickly used both hands to cover her face. To wet her pants in public and being found out by everyone, this wasn't just any ordinary way of losing face. She was still a lady. Li Shuer wished she could dig a hole and hide herself into it, never coming out to see anyone. She suddenly sprung right up, turned around and fled. As she fled, she didn't forget to cover her face up, worried that someone would recognize her in the middle of her escape. Huang Yueli didn't expect her to really wet her pants as she too went into a blank. It was until Li Shuer had fled before she regained her senses and shook her head as she laughed. Gas. This is really called to piss in one's pants in terror. The chilly frost in Li Moying's charming cherry blossom eyes slowly melted away and in replacement was filled with gentleness. Happy now? Leah. Huang Yueli pouted her lips pamperedly. Still all right. The main character had been scared off and those remaining bystander students didn't dare to stay around. Hadn't they seen for themselves how viciously he had treated his own sister? If they were to pull his whiskers, wouldn't they died even more horribly? Everyone's thinking were in sync as they slowly nudged away, not wanting to alarm Li Moying and Huang Yueli, and quietly slipped away. Huang Yueli saw this from the corner of her eyes and suddenly called out aloud, "Wait a minute, don't run away. I'm talking about you, the one in blue on the left." The young lady dressed in blue had already ran quite a distance away, thinking of leaving this unsafe place. In the end, she was pointed out by Huang Yueli. You can also listen on. The young lady in blue trembled with fear as she stopped in her tracks. Junior. Sister Bai, what instructions do you have for me? Huang Yueli laughed. You don't need to be so anxious. I only wanted to ask this, earlier. I heard what all of you were talking about and you mentioned that 3 days later would be the Armament Guild certification assessment. Is there such a matter? Blue dress lady heaved a sigh of relief as she replied, this is indeed true. Junior Sister Bai, you've just joined Celestial Light Academy so you probably aren't sure. In Celestial Light Academy, there are quite a number of students who learn armament refining and every year, the Armament Guild will conduct a standalone certification assessment for Celestial Light Academy which only those students or teachers in the academy will be allowed to attend. If they pass the assessment and officially become an armament master, then their treatment will directly be upgraded the same as martial arts stage top 10 ranking, and besides that they would be able to gain honorary points as a form of reward. She had assumed that Huang Yueli wanted to settle the old debt with her, but in the end, it was just to ask her some matters. Blue dress lady actively explained everything that she knew to her. So it's like this, Huang Yueli muttered irresolutely. No wonder Li Shuer is acting so complacently today. Isn't that so? Senior Sister Li holds the most hope to become an armament master in this round of certification assessment. Other students could only take part in the armament apprentice assessment only. Senior Sister Li is not yet 18 but her innate talent in armament refining is rather good. Oops. Blue dress lady was happily talking as she said out everything she had in her heart when she suddenly recalled that Huang Yueli and Li Shuer were enemies, so she hurriedly shut her mouth up. She took a quick glance at Huang Yueli nervously, worried that she would be lashed out at. However, Huang Yueli only waved her hand as she said, I understand now. Thank you, senior sister. Go ahead and be busy with your own stuff. As though being given amnesty, the blue dress lady turned around and ran away in lightning fast speed. This scenario made Huang Yueli slightly confused. What's the situation? Am I that scary? This is because they have a guilty conscience. Li Moying laughed in a low voice as she heard his voice from the side of her ear. Huang Yueli then recalled that this man was still standing beside her. She raised her head up to meet with that pair of extremely seductive cherry blossom eyes as she went into a daze, losing her senses, attracted by the pampered gaze deep within his eyes. Leah, you're drooling. Ah! Huang Yueli recalled her senses and raised her hand to wipe the corner of her lips when she heard what he said, but... You liar. There wasn't anything at all, so where did the drool come from? Li Moying laughed heartily. I'm just reminding you in advance. Otherwise when your drool really drips out, it'd be too late by then. Huang Yueli rolled her eyes at him. Who wants to listen to the rubbish you're sprouting? Thinking back to how she was oddly attracted by Li Moying, she pursed her lips as she suddenly felt annoyed. She must really had been bewitched. She was just thinking that she could not continue being ambiguous with this man, but in the end, the minute she met with that pair of eyes, she immediately forgot all her determination. It's all Li Moying's fault for having a pair of eyes which looked exactly like Mu Chengying's. Too demonic, and too seductive. She must hold on to herself tightly and not be bewitched easily again, Huang Yueli vowed to herself, but she really didn't have much confidence. Li Moying saw her suddenly acting melancholic and suddenly becoming angry. Her expressions were every changing as he curiously asked, "Leah, what are you thinking of?" Huang Yueli paused. "Right, I was just thinking that I can join in the Armament Guild's certification assessment that would be held 3 days later. You can also listen on. You want to take part in it as well?" Li Moying's brows rose. "Based on your armament refining standard, you still need to be certified by the Armament Guild. Those teachers in Celestial Light Academy don't even have 10% of your ability. You don't need the Armament Guild certification to raise your social value." Huang Yueli answered, "You can't put things in this way. The Armament Guild certification has its own advantages. Didn't you see it for yourself? Li Shuer is merely a high-leveled armament apprentice and she's already so popular. The Armament Master Medal is a symbol of status in Soaring Heaven's continent. Furthermore, the Armament Guild has many high-leveled materials and only those armament masters whom they have certified are able to exchange for it, and those are very useful to me." Li Moying put his hand on the top of her head as he patted her affectionately. "All right then, since you've already decided, then go ahead and enroll for it. No matter what you want to do, I'll always be by your side." Huang Yueli nodded, and under the man's gentle gaze, she felt relaxed and peaceful. Armament Guild is one of the strongest powerhouses in Soaring Heaven's continent, and almost all armament masters had registered themselves with the guild to attain certification. Just one armament master who stood out alone were already much sought after and well respected, causing many practitioners compete with one another to get into their good books. It was imaginable how strong the influence would be when so many armament masters united together. Not only did the Armament Guild held various high-leveled materials places of production, in Soaring Heaven's continent's auctions, one would be able to sell their own refined profound armament at a higher price in Soaring Heaven's continent's auctions. Profound armament traders or materials shops, as long as they were certified armament masters in the Armament Guild. Huang Yueli would never go against money, and in order to earn even more, obtaining a medal that represented a certified armament master was absolutely necessary. When they were in South Yu Kingdom, she didn't attend any armament master certification assessment because her cultivation level was still very low and without any backing. If her identity as an armament master was exposed, it would easily draw various people's greed and being plotted against. But now it was different. Her own ability was rather strong, and furthermore, she had the huge backing of Celestial Light Sect. After Huang Yueli made up her mind, so she proceeded to the profound weapon chambers 3 days later and enrolled herself for the certification assessment. On the day of the assessment, Huang Yueli was delayed as she was held up making preparation work. Li Moying had left his residence earlier, and without any hesitation, he headed straight to the profound weapon chambers. The entrance of the profound weapon chambers was already filled with people. The Armament Master Certification Assessment, which was held once a year, was a very important event in Celestial Light Academy. On this day, Skycloud City's Armament Guild Vice President would personally make a visit to Celestial Light Academy, and they were all truly 6th-tier armament masters, their social status extremely invaluable. Because of this, Celestial Light Academy's principals came out to welcome them personally. With so many VIPs around, the whole place was bustling with excitement. Furthermore, the refining process of armament masters was an absolute secret, and there weren't many chances to see it normally. It was only during the certification assessment day when those armament masters would publicly refine the profound armament under the watchful eyes of everyone there, so this was the only chance for ordinary practitioners to be able to see the entire refining process. Students who had a bit of curiosity in them had all woken up early and rushed over to the profound weapon chambers, hoping to get a chance to view the Academy's major event. You can also listen on. Early this morning, Tang Jinhua along with Jiang Tuxin and Ling Wenbin stood at the entrance of the profound weapon chambers as they waited to welcome the VIPs from the Armament Guild. Besides that, what was different from last year was beside Tang Jinhua was Li Shuer, who was dressed in the armament apprentice's robe. Li Shuer raised her chin up high with a dignified and solemn expression. If one were to take a careful look at her, one would be able to see the unconcealable delightfulness and arrogance deep within her eyes. This was not an ordinary occasion. At such an important event, for her to be selected as the students' representative, following beside the principals in the academy to welcome the Armament Guild's VIPs, this was a huge glory. This was also an enormous recognition towards her armament refining standard. Thinking that after today, she would become a true blue armament master and by then she would attain the academy's true special privilege level, Li Shuer couldn't help but revealed a smile. In reality, it was exactly so. Those students passing by were firstly shocked, followed by envy and jealousy when they saw Li Shuer standing right next to the principal as they started to discuss about her. Look, isn't that Li Shuer? How is it possible that she's standing right next to the principal? That's right. Just 2 days ago, I heard that Li Shuer and senior brother Li's relationship isn't good at all and had even been slapped by junior sister Bai. Why is she still enjoying such privileges in the academy? As the saying went, good news don't leave the house but bad news traveled 1,000 miles. Many others were not accustomed to Li Shuer's usual arrogant and despotic ways and after being taught a lesson by Huang Yueli and Li Moying that day exposing her swindling tricks, news of it was spread throughout the entire academy and very quickly, everyone found out about it. It was rumored that she had not left her room for 3 days because she felt ashamed and resentful. In the end, the minute she left her room, she became so glamorous, so how would it not make others feel jealousy and hatred? Sure, lower your voice. Someone who knew what was going on cut off their discussions. Have you all forgotten that Li Shuer is a high-leveled armament apprentice? I heard that among the students taking part in the Armament Master certification today, she is the youngest and moreover, there is 90% and above chance that she would be able to pass it. Do you know what this means? What? How can that be possible? Li Shuer is not yet 18, right? An entry-level armament master is the toughest among all the different occupations. For her to become an official armament master at such a tender age, her future is boundless. Ari, no wonder she's so complacent today. As long as she becomes an armament master, she will no longer be on the same level as us. Isn't that so? So that's why I'm asking you all to lower your volume. If she hears you and uses her status as an armament master to exact revenge on you in the future, then what should you do? Really envy Li Shuer. Even though senior brother Li refused to be her backing, but she's still so powerful. This time, no one else dared to say a single word. Li Shuer stood at an eye-grabbing position at the entrance and although she could not hear what the spectators were saying, but she had roughly guessed the contents which they were discussing about. She puffed out her chest and tidied her robe, trying her utmost best to make her deportment stand out even more perfectly. This was a day which she was destined to become famous and everyone could only throw those envious gazes onto her. So what if Bai Ruoli was complacent? After today, she would be even more glamorous than that wretched lass. Perhaps even Li Moying would regret his actions and come begging her to admit their sibling relationship. Just then, an uproar was heard from the main entrance. The vice president of the Armament Guild had arrived. Jiang Tuxin and the rest hurriedly went up to welcome them. You can also listen on. Tang Jinhua pulled Li Shuer over and whispered, Shuer, I will now introduce you the 2 presidents so you must perform well. Li Shuer perked herself up as she nodded, yes, master please rest assured. Although Tang Jinhua was just a 4th-tier armament master, but he was just barely 40 years old and among armament masters, he was one of the younger ones and had many chances to advance further in future. He was considered as one of the outstanding younger generation so in the Armament Guild, his status was not low at all. After the 2 presidents had met with Jiang Tuxin, they turned their gazes towards Tang Jinhua. Jinhua, I heard that you had improved tremendously these days. Not only have you started to refine 5th-tier profound armaments, furthermore, you also nurtured an outstanding disciple. I think the most highly of you among the younger generations. You have a bright future ahead. Tang Jinhua hurriedly smiled, President Hu, President Gong, thank you for your praises. It's all thanks to Celestial Light Academy and Armament Guild's help that I have today's achievements. President Hu smiled. It's not easy these days to see someone so talented to be so modest and prudent. I really didn't think wrongly of you. This young lady beside you is. The two presidents looked towards Li Shuer and she immediately puffed out her chest as she raised her head to reveal a smile. Tang Jinhua introduced. This is Li Shuer, the female disciple who I had mentioned the other time. Today she will also be taking part in the Armament Master Certification Assessment. Oh, I heard she's only 18. Before Tang Jinhua had opened his mouth, Li Shuer already started to speak out. President Hu, I will be turning 18 at the end of this year. Then how much confidence do you have to pass today's assessment? This Li Shuer's smile was gentle and elegant, but her tone was filled with self-confidence. The first-tier profound armament percentage of success that I'm currently refining is now 90% and above. I think in this way, passing the first-tier armament master certification shouldn't be a problem at all. The two presidents revealed a shocked and joyous expression. That's great. Jinhua, where did you manage to find this armament refining talent? She's not 18 yet but already had a 90% certainty of refining first-tier profound armament. Most experienced first-tier armament masters only have a success rate of 50 to 60%. Miss Li's future endeavors is limitless. Li Shuer hastily shook her hands. I do not deserve your praise, you flatter me. Although she was saying this, but inside her heart she was overly complacent. To be praised in such a way by Sky Cloud City's Armament Guild presidents was such an honorable matter. Only an armament refining talent like her deserved such special treatment. Li Shuer was indeed way too glamorous. Seeing how she conversed with President Hu and President Gong, numerous spectators on the spectators' seats shot jealous gazes towards her. But no matter how envious they were, they had nothing to say. An armament refining talent like Li Shuer was indeed rarely seen, and even though many of them were not convinced, they could do nothing about it. After the two presidents were escorted to their seats, President Jiang proceeded on the judging panel's seat. Li Shuer bowed in respect as she stepped backwards, thinking of doing some preparations on the contestants' seats. But at this time, another bustle came from the entrance of the profound weapon chambers. Furthermore, it was even more lively than when the two presidents appeared. President Hu asked curiously, what's going on? President Jiang, who else have you invited to be on the judging panel? Don't tell me, it's those old monsters from Sky Emperor City. Jiang Tuxin went into a blank. There's no one else. The judging panel whom I had invited have already arrived. He raised his head and looked towards the entrance when he suddenly opened his eyes wide. Oh, it's actually him. You can also listen on. A tall figure appeared in front of the profound weapon chambers. That person was Li Moying. He was dressed in a dark-colored robe with gold trimming on the side, and his demeanor was cold but noble. His facial features were perfectly sculpted without any flaws at all. His expression was chilly, and as his lips curled upward slightly, his gaze swept past the entire profound weapon chambers and the expression became even colder. His little fox had not arrived yet. So boring. Jiang Tuxin didn't guess what Li Moying was thinking about, and upon seeing his unpleasant expression, he thought it was because of his thoughtlessness as he anxiously stood up. Principal Jiang, what's wrong with you? President Hu saw his behavior and became even more surprised as he questioned. Jiang Tuxin didn't reply him, instead he took quick steps and appeared right before Li Moying. Ling Wenbin and Tang Jinhua also hurried over to welcome him. Young. Mr. Li, what brings you here today to the profound weapon chambers? Are you here to see the certification assessment as well? Li Moying undeniably nodded. Jiang Tuxin whined silently. He had never expected young sect master to be interested in the armament master's certification. To ordinary people, watching the armament masters publicly refining weapons was rather refreshing, but for a peerless talent with such status like Li Moying, he had met with even higher-leveled armament masters. The performance by these armament apprentices would probably not be of any interest to him, so who would have expected him to take interest in this? Just at this moment, Jiang Tuxin shifted his gaze and saw Li Shuer, who was just standing by the side with a shocked but delighted expression. A thought flashed past his head as he thought he understood what happened. Right, Li Shuer, who was taking part in the assessment this year, was rumored to be the young sect master's biological sister. No wonder young sect master had personally appeared to witness the certification assessment. Although it was said that the siblings, Li Shuer and Li Moying, were not on good terms, but it was still a glorious matter to have a sister who was an armament master. Perhaps young sect master had seen the outstanding armament refining talent in her and decided to forgive her for all the wrongdoings that she had done in the past. After all, they are truly siblings and this was not impossible. Jiang Tuxin quickly said, "Mr. Li, please follow me and take a seat here. The seat here has the best view." With him leading the way, he led Li Moying to the VIP seat on the tall stage and even requested him to take the main seat. Li Moying saw the shocked expressions on the faces of the students below the stage and rejected Jiang Tuxin's kind offer. "How can I take over Principal Jiang's seat? I'll just sit here." Saying that, he sat down on the seat next to Ling Wenbin's seat. When Jiang Tuxin and Ling Wenbin saw that, they didn't dare to sit at all. Sitting above the young sect master, just thinking about it was already very offending. But right after Li Moying's chilly gaze swept past them once, both of them sat down with fear and trepidation. At this moment, it turned tumultuous on both the spectators and contestants' seating area. Even Jiang Tuxin had thought Li Moying was here because of Li Shuer. What more about Li Shuer herself as well as the other students? Senior brother Li actually came. He actually came to see Li Shuer take part in the competition. Isn't their relationship on bad terms? Isn't it said that senior brother Li especially hated Li Shuer? So what about that? Li Shuer's armament refining talent is there, so even senior brother Li cannot ignore it. It looks like he's here to initiate his goodwill, preparing to patch up their relationship. Oh no. I'd thought that senior brother Li really hated Li Shuer and even went to laugh at her. Will she exact revenge on me in the future? You can also listen on. A smug smile hung on Li Shuer's face, showing just how happy she was. Even Li Moying also came. The humiliation which she suffered from Huang Yueli a few days ago had finally been swept clean. On the VIP seating area, President Hu took a look at Li Moying's icy cold face after trying to suppress his curiosity for quite some time. He secretly got closer to Jiang Tuxin and whispered, "Principal Jiang, why didn't you introduce him to us? Just who is this young mister? Why is it that even with your status, you still had to treat him with such respect?" When Jiang Tuxin heard that, he turned to look at Li Moying anxiously, worried that he would be angry over their private discussion. Li Moying, however, only used his hand to support his chin as he glanced impatiently towards the direction of the main entrance. Jiang Tuxin was then assured as he whispered back, "President Hu, this is Celestial Light Sect's young sect master Li Moying. I think you should have heard of him before, right?" President Hu cried out in alarm, causing the surrounding few people to look towards them as he hurriedly covered his mouth. He lowered his tone even more and asked unbelievably, "You're saying this person is young sect master Li himself?" Jiang Tuxin nodded, "That's right." President Hu asked flabbergasted, "Heavens, it's really him. Li Moying is Skycloud City's most famous genius. A lot of people are saying that young sect master Li had the highest hope to surpass Mu Chengying and become the top exponent in Soaring Heaven's continent. I wonder if that's true?" Jiang Tuxin smiled. "I'd never expected President Hu to know so much about Celestial Light Sect. Young sect master's innate talent and ability is without a doubt the best, but we don't dare to say stuff like he will surpass Mu Chengying, but among the younger generation of practitioners, he definitely is unsurpassed. But why would he be here at Celestial Light Academy? Moreover, this is the Armament Master Certification Assessment and it's merely a competition among armament apprentices, so what could possibly attract young sect master Li's interest?" Jiang Tuxin lowered his voice, "Among the contenders today, young sect master's sister is here and you've already met her earlier." President Hu wasn't listening carefully because just looking at Li Moying already caused him to exclaim in admiration. Li Moying's name, among Skycloud City's higher-ups, was a well-known existence. When he was very young, he already stood out as conspicuously brilliant, sweeping all his peers aside, and his cultivation clambered up steadily, exceeding everyone's imagination. He was unbelievably strong. Everyone knew that in just a few more years, Li Moying would definitely become one of the strongest top exponents in Soaring Heaven's continent. So even President Hu was Sky Cloud City's Armament Guild's president, had utmost respect for Li Moying because there were just too many legends about him. Only those who had seen it with their own eyes understood what his kind of innate talent meant. Furthermore, President Hu discovered from the first meeting today, Li Moying was not only younger than he had thought, but his cultivation and imposing manner exceeded by several times his age. At this moment, a phrase arose in President Hu's mind, a fully justified reputation. As though sensing President Hu's sight, Li Moying turned his head slightly and nodded towards him. President Hu, my little thing will be in your care in the future.
Oh.
Yes, of course, of course. President Hu hurriedly nodded, and at the same time he recalled what Jiang Tuxin said. He had met the armament apprentice. Surely it cannot be Li Shuer. Right, both their surnames are Li, so looks like he can't be wrong. You can also listen on. Senior Sister Li, you're really so fortunate. Even Senior Brother Li is here to cheer for you. You're the most glamorous person today. You're really worthy of being the student who had the most innate talent in our profound weapon chambers. Li Shuer was surrounded by the crowd as she delightfully accepted various praises from all around. Today was her lucky day. Not only was she the limelight among the ordinary students and armament masters, even her second brother, whose sight was very high, dropped by. A pity that wretched lass by Ruoli didn't come over, otherwise. She could slap her on the face here. That would really be wonderful. Ari, that's weird. Her second brother was here, but why didn't that wretched lass join in? Could it be that she had been ditched by her second brother? If that was the truth, then it would make her overjoyed. Just as Li Shuer was daydreaming, she suddenly heard someone beside her exclaimed loudly, "Ah, Junior Sister Bai." She actually came too. Li Shuer hurriedly turned around and saw a young lady dressed in white gracefully standing at the entrance of the profound weapon chambers. After looking around for a moment, she slowly walked in. Her footsteps were light and dressing was considered simple as she walked in taciturnly. But at that instant when she walked into the entrance, everyone's eyes were on her. It's Junior Sister Bai. Haha, she's so beautiful. Why is it that every time I see Junior Sister Bai, I feel that she looked even more beautiful than the last time? Which lady doesn't have this white-colored flowing dress? But why is it only her who can make it look so elegant and magical? Because she has the ability and style. How can you compare ordinary people against her? Junior Sister Bai should be here to accompany Senior Brother Li to view the assessment. I really envy them. Their relationship is so sweet. They'd accompany each other wherever they go. Every time I see them appearing together, I feel like I'm starting to believe in love. Those students who were fawning around Li Shuer had cast her aside the minute they saw Huang Yueli appeared, and everyone went to crowd around Huang Yueli instead. This made Li Shuer so upset that she stomped her feet. This wretched lass really deserved to die. What did she have that could attract everyone's attention? This was not the martial arts stage, this was the profound weapon chambers. Today was a day which belonged to armament masters. What sort of thing was that wretched lass to even dare to come and snatch her limelight? On the VIP seats, Jiang Tuxin turned to look at Li Moying when he saw Huang Yueli stepping in. Young sect master, Miss Bai is here, do you want to let her come to the VIP seating as well? The view here is much better than the spectators' seating. The minute Li Moying saw Huang Yueli, his eyes smiled, and at that moment, his expression turned much gentler as he shook his head slightly. No need. Jiang Tuxin was stunned by his answer. Hadn't young sect master pamper this little fiancé of his the most? Both of them were here to look at the assessment, but they were not going to sit together. What was this kind of situation? Had they quarreled? But it didn't look like so. Just as he was in a blank, Huang Yueli had walked directly to the contenders' seating area. The managing teacher who was in charge of the assessment grading level raised his head and spoke politely. Miss Bai, you've gone to the wrong area. The spectators' seating is over there from the left staircase. This is the contenders' seating. Huang Yueli smiled. I didn't walk wrongly. I'm here to enroll to take part in the Armament Master Certification Assessment.
Ah.
The managing teacher went into a blank. You want to enroll for the assessment? Huang Yueli nodded. That's right, I'd like to trouble teacher to please help me register for it. You can also listen on. The managing teacher's eyes turned wide as though he had been struck by lightning. This. Miss Bai, you're not joking, right? Or have you walked to the wrong place? This is the Profound Weapon Chambers. We're holding the Armament Master Certification Assessment right now. This is not the martial arts stage battle or the year-end academy meet. You want to enroll for this? Are you sure? Huang Yueli blinked. Teacher, I didn't get it wrong. I'm indeed here to take part in the Armament Master Certification Assessment. I'm very sure. The assessment is going to start soon, right? Stop wasting time and quickly help me to enroll. She pushed. But managing teacher stared at her, not moving at all. This. Miss Bai, I know you have outstanding talent in cultivation and your potential is very strong, but this is armament refining. Armament refining. It's totally different from cultivation. No matter how good your innate talent in cultivation is, it doesn't represent that you can casually become an armament master. Huang Yueli replied, whether I can become an armament master or not, it's not up to you, it's after taking part in the assessment, right? I already heard about the requirements for the certification assessment. As long as we are Celestial Light Academy students with dual metal and dire attributes, innate talent, and have enough understanding and recognition towards armaments, then we're allowed to take part in the assessment, no? What you are saying is right. But, then stop hemming and hawing, hurry up. The managing teacher didn't know how to reject her and his expression had turned slightly green, thinking to himself, why was there such a self-approbation person? Did she really think she had great innate talent in cultivation so she'd be invincible? Did she knew how rare armament masters were and how difficult it was to become one? Furthermore, even if she had an innate talent to refine armaments, not everyone could become armament masters. Most people, for their entire lives, were only armament apprentices and were able to help fix profound armaments, but if they wanted to refine successfully, it was a huge difference. As for a 14-year-old lass like her, no one had heard that she knew the art of refining armaments. She wanted to become an armament master. Did I hear wrongly? Isn't this our super genius, martial arts ranked third miss? What did I hear just now? You want to take part in the Armament Master Certification Assessment? A piercing voice rang as Li Shuer walked over from the back of the managing teacher with a gloating smile on her face. Huang Yueli replied icily, what does it have to do with you? Just manage yourself properly. Not only did Li Shuer not retreat, she got even closer to her and said, why doesn't it concern me? After today, I am the Armament Guild's official member. I must protect Armament Master's pride. If every stray dogs and cats were to come over to disturb the Armament Master's place, it would affect our certification assessment. How can I possibly not be concerned about this? Huang Yueli's gaze turned frosty. You also know after today? You're not even a first-tier armament master yet, so don't be too full of yourself, otherwise if you aren't able to pass the assessment, then it'd be a huge joke. Ha ha ha, how is that possible? Do you think I'm you? This is the funniest joke that I've heard this year. An idiot who doesn't understand anything dares to take part in the Armament Master Assessment. Ha 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 ha, it's so funny. If you can become an armament master, then I'll strip off everything and run one round in Sky Cloud City naked. You really know how to joke. Li Shuers laughed out loudly without any fear at all. She hadn't even considered the possibility that Huang Yueli could become an armament master. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli smiled as she continued, is it really that funny? Since you have already set your mind that it's not possible for me to pass the examination, then shall we make a bet? Bet? What do you want to bet on? Li Shuer threw a heavily guarded look at her. Although she firmly believed that Huang Yueli didn't know the art of refining armaments, but Li Shuer's alert was still on high. Because Huang Yueli was just too abnormal, every single battle she had in Celestial Light Academy earned her bowls full of money, and as for those who went against her, all of them had lost everything they had to the last bit, including their underpant. When Li Shuer recalled these precedents, she started to feel afraid. Huang Yueli replied, didn't you say it out yourself earlier? As long as I can pass the Armament Master certification, then you will strip off everything and run around Sky Cloud City naked. Why? Don't tell me you were only just saying. Li Shuai heaved a sigh of relief. You're talking about this. Don't tell me that you really think that you can pass the certification. Hihi, anyway I don't believe it, so I'll make a bet with you. What if you didn't pass it? Huang Yueli took a look at her and replied indifferently, then I'll be at your disposal. Oh, really? Li Shuai's eyeballs turned around as a spell of ecstasy filled her mind. She never thought that Huang Yueli would be so dumb until she will be at her disposal. Furthermore, she was obviously going to lose. As long as she fell into her hands, heh. In Li Shuai's mind, hundreds of torturous ideas flashed past her mind, and the more she thought the more excited she got. She was 100% sure that after today, Huang Yueli would be reduced from a talented young lady to the academy or even the entire city's laughingstock. Perhaps she might even be so ashamed that she would throw herself at the wall and kill herself. All right, I'll bet. Hope. You won't regret. Li Shuai couldn't wait any further and agreed on it. She felt that her success rate was 100%. Because Huang Yueli's cultivational talent was already very high. In normal terms, a person's energy was limited and she had spent so much time on the art of cultivation, so even if she had the potential to become an armament master, she probably wouldn't have enough time to learn armament refining. Li Shuai's thinking wasn't wrong at all, as all the others who saw this scenario also thought the same way. On the VIP seating, several VIPs looked this way and noted down Huang Yueli and Li Shuai's confrontation. Even though they couldn't hear their conversation clearly, but from the way they stared at each other, they knew both of them were in an argument. Jiang Tuxin took a careful glance at Li Moying, saw his icy cold look and couldn't help but shuddered. Young sect master, this. Miss by this. Is she really going to take part in the armament master assessment? Li Moying gave an apathetic expression. Why? Can't she? Don't tell me she doesn't have the qualification to take part in the assessment. This. She has, of course she has. But. Li Moying's eyebrows rose as an icy cold vision swept past Jiang Tuxin's face. Jiang Tuxin hurriedly replied, no buts. Since Miss Bai has interest in armament refining, it's the Academy's armament master's glory. Whatever assessment Miss Bai will like to take part, then she can do so. Li Moying's expression turned slightly better after that as he nodded. Jiang Tuxin turned towards Tang Jinhua hastily and instructed, Master Tang, why did they start quarreling? Can I trouble you to take a look at the situation? Tang Jinhua immediately arose and ran over. However, it was already too late when he reached, as Huang Yueli and Li Shuai had already agreed on the bet. You can also listen on. The managing teacher looked at the two young ladies in front of him and was still hesitating, thinking of ideas on how he could reject Huang Yueli. He was doing it out of kind-heartedness because he had heard their conversation and believing that Huang Yueli would definitely lose, so he refused to register for her. Teacher, just let her register. Anyway, there are always people who think too highly of themselves, and by the time they threw their face away, it was also her own fault for bringing trouble to herself, so it had nothing to do with you. Li Shuai sneered as she continued talking. Both of you ladies, please stop arguing. Tang Jinhua walked over and interrupted them. It's all right, since Miss Bai wants to take part in the assessment, then do the registration for her. But, Master Tang, Li Shuai cried out in joy, Master, you're the most reasonable person, Bai Ruoli, aren't you going to register? Surely you're not going to regret, right? You're thinking too much. Huang Yueli shot her a glance and signed her name on the registration form. She speedily completed filling in the form and passed it over to Tang Jinhua. Tang Jinhua's face was all smiles. Miss Bai, previously I wanted to take you in as my disciple and you mentioned that you're not interested in armament refining, so I'd not expected you to change your mind so quickly. After today's assessment, feel free to come and look for me. Don't worry, as long as you learn from me properly, at most 2 years, you'd definitely become a true blue armament master. Don't be too anxious today. Just familiarize yourself with the scenario. Huang Yueli gave a non-committal smile, not saying a word. Li Shuai, on the other hand, clenched her teeth silently. Why hadn't Master still given up on the idea of taking in this wretched lass as his disciple? What's so good about this wretched lass that made her master kept pestering her, but in the end she couldn't care less about it? But no matter, as long as that wretched lass made a fool out of herself today, then in the future, she would not have any more interest in armament refining. Managing teacher tried several times to talk, but he wasn't able to tell Tang Jinhua anything at all and was extremely frustrated. Finished, it's finished. Master Tang didn't know what these two lasses betted on, and he didn't know the severity of this matter. This time round, the Academy's most reputed cultivational talent was going to have her reputation swept away. But saying anything now was all too late. They had already dragged on for some time, so the minute the registration was completed, all the contenders started to go to their seating. Tang Jinhua also took quick steps back onto the stage and, acting as the MC, he officially announced the start of this year's assessment. Right after President Hu and Jiang Tuxin's speeches, Tang Jinhua announced the rules and regulations for the assessment. As always, first-tier armament master certification assessment is split up into two sections, theory and practical assessment. We will first proceed with the theory assessment and will give out the examination paper to everyone. The duration of this assessment will last 2 hours and there is an hourglass in front to count the time. Saying that, he specially reminded, Number 2, theory assessment is equally important as those who are able to obtain the minimum of 60 points will be able to enter the next round of assessment, otherwise you will be disqualified. So everyone please place your utmost emphasis on this. Now, the assessment will start. Managing teacher handed the examination paper to every single person and Tang Jinhua personally turned the huge hourglass around to start the countdown. The Armament Master Certification Assessment officially started. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli received the examination paper and enthusiastically flipped through the paper, feeling novelty. It was hard for her to imagine that the first-tier Armament Master Certification included the theory section, as she did not expect it. Armament refining was a form of workmanship which required a lot of practice. No matter how strong one's theory was, even if one put it into hundreds and thousands of words, but ultimately, the profound armament must be refined out, then would it be considered successful? So she wasn't really used to this kind of assessment method. In her past life, when she was learning how to refine armaments in Mythical Flame Palace, she had never took part in the so-called certification assessment. When she was in her teens, she could already refine profound weapons which were 5th tier and above. During the first time she exhibited her profound armament in Soaring Heavens Continent auction, it had shocked all the armament masters in the Armament Guild headquarters. Subsequently, she was conferred the 5th tier Armament Master's badge directly. After that, she became the Armament Guild's most protected person and every single breakthrough of hers was known to everyone and the badge would be presented by the president automatically. So from the start till the end, she had never taken part in such an official assessment. Huang Yueli dwelled in her past memories and didn't started answering the examination paper. Li Shuera was just sitting beside Huang Yueli and she took a bit of time to steal a glance at her, only to discover that Huang Yueli's examination paper was totally blank without a single word, so she couldn't stop herself from revealing a snigger. As expected, this wretched lass didn't know anything at all. Such simple questions and she couldn't reply even a single one, so how could she even had the face to take part in the certification assessment? Originally she had thought that this wretched lass had dared to bet with her. She would at least had looked through several theory books and could answer at least 70 or 80% of the examination paper's questions. But she had not expected that she couldn't even make it in the theory section. Looks like she didn't even need to wait for the second round and Huang Yueli would already been disqualified. Wasn't this an easy win? Li Shuera was extremely complacent as the pen in her hands started to dance around while she answered all the questions. Perhaps it was because she felt that she was going to win immediately, and today, she especially had the inspiration, so she was even faster than usual while answering the question. Upon seeing that there were only 45 minutes left for the countdown, her examination paper was already more than 90% completed. Li Shuer increased her writing speed, thinking to become the first person to hand in the examination paper. To be able to be the first to hand in the paper was a representation of ability. The Armament Master Theory Assessment was extremely difficult and there were a lot of questions. Most people would only be able to complete 60 to 70% of the questions within 2 hours, and it was very impressive that one could answer 90% of it. Generally speaking, only those people who had a strong base in theory standard could answer all the questions correctly. As for submitting the paper earlier, even those who had already been certified as a true blue first-tier armament master might not be able to do it. Li Shuai wrote faster and faster. She was just 2 questions away from answering all the questions. Just at this moment, she suddenly heard a voice of someone who stood up from the neighboring seat. Li Shuai turned back and saw Huang Yueli standing up from her seat as she put down the pen in her hands and was just holding up her examination paper, preparing to submit it. She instantly was stunned. What situation was this? How is it possible that that wretched lass who didn't knew anything be faster than her? And she was the first one to submit the examination paper? Surely it can't be true. However, it was indeed the truth as Huang Yueli took big strides and walked upwards, passing the examination paper in her hands to Tang Jinhua. Li Shuai stared at the examination paper in her hands and suddenly thought that earlier, Huang Yueli's paper was still blank, so how could she answer all the questions so quickly? You can also listen on. Thinking in this direction, Li Shuai assumed that she had already discovered the truth. That's right. That wretched lass couldn't even answer one single question earlier, but now she suddenly answered everything. Who was she trying to bluff? Obviously she did that so that she could snatch being the first to submit the paper and just scribbled a load of rubbish before submitting the paper. Li Shuai found it funny as she didn't expect that wretched lass to be so dumb. Did she thought that being the first to submit the paper would gain her additional marks and allowed her to get priority in getting through the first round? How could that be possible? In the end, it was still going to follow according to number of questions that they answered correctly to ascertain the marks. What use was there to write quickly? Not only Li Shuai, the others also felt that Huang Yueli had casually answered the questions. Look, Bai Ruoli had submitted her paper. She actually submitted it so quickly. What's there to be surprised about? Anyway, even if she used up the entire 2 hours, she wouldn't be able to answer those questions correctly, so she might as well submit the paper earlier. That's right, if it was me, I probably would submit earlier as well. After all, if I couldn't come out with any other answers, the pressure from just sitting there is just too tremendous. Looks like she couldn't even pass through the first round of theory section. Really don't know what she's thinking about. Why did she come and take part in the Armament Master Certification Assessment for? She's just here to disgrace herself. Her legendary reputation is going to be destroyed here. Tang Jinhua received the paper from Huang Yueli but just smiled. It's been hard on you. The next round of assessment will commence after 1 hour, so Miss Bai, you can go ahead and rest a bit. His attitude was amiable, but he didn't think that Huang Yueli would be able to pass the assessment. On the contrary, Tang Jinhua had already decided that Huang Yueli could not answer many questions, so her assessment results was a definite failure. But as she had the qualities of a rough diamond, even if she didn't pass this time's assessment, she didn't need to worry too much about it. Huang Yueli saw his expression and immediately knew what he was thinking about, but merely smiled, not bothering to explain at all. After a while, Li Shuai also completed her examination paper and submitted it up. This round, Tang Jinhua was truly glad. Shuai, you're actually able to submit the paper earlier. Looks like you're fully prepared for this certification assessment. Not bad at all. Li Shuai replied, Master, thank you for your praises. She sounded humble, but when she turned towards Huang Yueli, she raised her chin arrogantly with a satisfactory look. When the two of them left the examination premises, Li Shuai intentionally lowered her voice. You're too much of a joke, aren't you? Knowing that you can't answer the questions, you actually still submitted your paper earlier. Did you think that it would change anything? Haha, I'm telling you, the result will be the same. I didn't expect you to fail the first round of assessment and that I'm going to gain victory immediately. Such an easy win simply made me feel a little embarrassed. Huang Yueli's eyebrows rose up. Why? You feel that you've definitely won? Li Shuai smiled. Naturally. Don't tell me that you think using that little bit of time to scribble some gibberish, you'd be able to answer at least 60% of the questions correctly. This is the Armament Master Assessment. The examination questions have the most difficulty. Stop daydreaming and be prepared. Earlier we had agreed on this, if you lose, you'd be at my dispose, Leah. When Huang Yueli was submitting the examination paper, Li Moying had already stood up and walked towards the exit. Li Shuai heard his voice and jumped, not expected Li Moying to be standing right beside them. The things that she had said earlier had probably reached his ears. You can also listen on. Regarding this is the first time I've heard too, that Miss Bai has interest in armament refining. Probably she's just here for fun only. Just as they were conversing, suddenly they heard an uproar. Tang Jinhua appeared on the stage once again. Everyone, the 1 hour's rest time is up and the Armament Guild and Celestial Light Academy's Profound Weapon Chambers teachers have gone through the examination papers and had already marked every student's papers. Now I shall announce the examination result. Fang Zhihua, 53 points, Zhu Xiang, 61 points, Zhao Haicheng, 45 points. As the various results were reported out by Tang Jinhua, the students who heard the results had mixed reactions. Some were happy beyond words whereas some were dejected. Everyone's marks were not considered very high and the number of people who had passed this round merely obtained 60 to 70 points only. But this was after all a theory examination, and if one had seriously prepared would still be able to get slightly higher marks, so around half of the students had obtained the passing mark of 60 points. Li Shuai, 85 points. The minute this result was announced, it immediately caused an uproar among the crowd. That's just too incredible, 85 points. How did she even do that? I heard that around 30% of the answers to the questions aren't found directly in the armament refining ancient records and must make use of one's understanding to complete it. So to be able to obtain 80 points was already a very difficult score to obtain, and Li Shuai actually managed to get 85 points. Heavens, no wonder everyone said she was an armament refining genius. She indeed is outstanding. Even though those who usually disliked Li Shuai also couldn't help but admit that Li Shuai's score was indeed ridiculously high. Similarly, it also meant that she had the potential to crush the other examinees. Even President Hu and President Gong silently nodded their heads when they heard this score. Tang Jinhua smiled as he said, "All right, the above are the results for this round's assessment. Congratulations to those who had passed the first round of the assessment. Everyone, let's show our congratulations to them." The spectators started to clap. Li Shuai's face had a slight smile hanging on her face, enjoying everyone's envious glares. But among the disorderly clapping, Huang Yueli's eyes widened in surprise. Because she didn't actually heard her examination result. What kind of situation was this? Had her score been left out accidentally? Huang Yueli hurriedly walked upwards and inquired, "Master Tang, what's going on? Why wasn't my results announced?" Tang Jinhua stood stunned as he hemmed and hawed. "Ah? Really? Your results wasn't announced? How is that possible? Could you have missed it?" As he was saying that, he kept winking at Huang Yueli, hinting her not to question any further. Huang Yueli had understood his underlying hint but still continued to ask, "I really didn't hear it. Will Master Tang please tell me again? At least let me know if I had passed the first round of assessment." This, Tang Jinhua's expression turned embarrassed as he didn't know what to say at this moment. Because he had intentionally not revealed Huang Yueli's results out as that result was really. Li Shuai saw his awkward expression and her eyes lit up as she immediately understood what had happened. Tang Jinhua was not willing to say it out, so what other reason could it have been due to? It must be because this wretched lass's marks was simply too low and totally unpresentable. She immediately called out loudly, "That's right, Master, I didn't hear it earlier too. It seemed to really have been left out. Such an important assessment, it's much fairer for everyone to know what her marks are. We cannot bully junior sister Bai. You can also listen on." Li Shuai's neck shrank back as she started to feel afraid. But Li Moying only shot a cold glance at her and turned directly towards Huang Yueli, speaking in a deep voice with gentleness in his eyes. "Leah, are you tired? Quickly, come over this side and take a rest. I've brought you some water, so come drink a little." He passed Huang Yueli a glass of water. Huang Yueli received the glass and drank one mouthful only to discover that this was tea made out of amethyst green leaves. The effect of this tea was to refresh and clear the mind. Her eyes immediately lit up and her lips curled up into a sweet smile. "You're really considerate, thank you." Lee Moying smiled as he smoothed her slightly frizzled hair. "No need for thanks, quickly come over and take a seat." The two of them sat down in one corner of the spectators' seating area. Even though their seats were really very, very far off in an isolated corner, so generally speaking, most people would not have noticed what was happening in the corner. But as both of them were too eye-catching, numerous glances fell onto them. "Wow, so sweet. Senior brother Lee is really nice to Bai Ruoli and so considerate. I really envy her." "That's right, if senior brother Lee uses that pair of peach blossom eyes and gives me just one look, I will immediately faint on the spot." "Boo-hoo, why is Bai Ruoli's life so good? To let senior brother Lee keep looking at her." "Oh, in this case, senior brother Lee came today is to watch Bai Ruoli's assessment. Earlier I thought he was here to watch out for Li Shuer. I'm so dumb. Why didn't you use your brain and think properly? How can that be possible?" Senior brother Lee had never liked Li Shuer. "That's what I thought. Just a few days ago, senior brother Lee just taught Li Shuer a lesson, so how was it possible that they would make up so quickly? Just look at Li Shuer's complacent look. You'd think how incredible a first-tier armament master was to be able to make a male god like senior brother Lee to bend his pride and please her. Isn't she a little too narcissistic?" Li Shuer was totally ignored by Lee Moying and she was already feeling stuffed, but when she heard the crowd's whisperings, she felt as though she had been slapped on the face as it flushed red, feeling extremely embarrassed. She silently gritted her teeth as hatred filled her heart. Forget it, just let that wretched lass be complacent for a little while more. Anyway, after the assessment results had been announced, Bai Ruoli will be out of the game. By then, she will absolutely let this wretched lass see some colors. Jiang Tuxin and the rest were watching from afar from the VIP seating area. President Hu looked how intimately the both of them behaved as he curiously asked, "Principal Jiang, that young lady is?" Jiang Tuxin introduced, "This Miss Bai is one of Celestial Light Academy's students and she had an exceptionally high innate talent in the art of cultivation. Merely 14 and she's already a third-stage realm 9th level practitioner. In the future, she will definitely become one of Sky Cloud City's powerful top exponent." "That's incredible. No wonder your academy is Sky Cloud City's #1 military institution, it's just full of talented minors. Then, she and young sect master Lee, young sect master and Miss Bai are fiancé and fiancé, and I heard that had been arranged since they were babies." Jiang Tuxin was all smiles as he explained. Both President Hu and President Gong were stunned. The reason was because they had heard rumors regarding Li Moying and Murong Fei's marriage and they totally could not understand where this Miss Bai appeared from. However, they were all intelligent people and didn't ask any further. This Miss Bai is really not simple. Not only does she have outstanding innate talent in martial cultivation, she also had extraordinary talent in armament refining, to be able to hand in the paper much earlier. Looks like it won't only be Li Shuer who will be able to pass today's certification assessment. The minute President Hu said that, Jiang Tuxin started to appear slightly embarrassed. "You can also listen on." Hearing Li Shuer's words, everyone present started to parrot whatever she said. "That's right, I didn't hear it either. It seemed that Bai Ruoli's score is left out. Master Tang, please announce it one more time. We also like to know what score did Bai Ruoli get." The Armament Master Certification Assessment was well known to be impartial and fair, so now that one person's results was short, everyone could not accept it at all. Tang Jinhua glanced helplessly at Huang Yueli and slowly said, "Could it really be that I had made a mistake? Let me check once again." Under the scrutiny of numerous pairs of eyes, he could only announce, "Bai Ruoli's theory assessment results is 30 points. 30 points. Oh, junior sister Bai's score is indeed very low, and is the lowest among all those who took part in the assessment. Earlier she looked so confident when she went up to register. I had thought that she really knew how to refine armament. So she was only putting up a show. How could you say that she didn't understand? Junior sister Bai had at least scored 30 points. Why don't you go and try taking the assessment?" For someone like her who had not learnt systemically about armament refining could attain this score is already not bad at all. But as compared to real armament masters, the disparity is just too huge. Li Shuai had scored 85 points, close to 3 times of her score. The crowd were speculating and discussing on their own views. Huang Yueli's eyes grew wide, simply unable to believe her own ears. Master Tang, what did you say? How many points did I score? Tang Jinhua couldn't help but sigh. Miss Bai, I know you are not willing to accept this truth, but you indeed had only scored 30 points and you have not passed the first round of assessment. But don't be too discouraged. You had already scored much better than what I had expected, so next year, you will definitely be able to pass the theory assessment. Tang Jinhua looked at her shocked expression and shook his head sympathetically. Huang Yueli's score was indeed too low. Generally speaking, for those armament apprentices who had the guts to register for the certification assessment were normally the cream of the crop among the same age, and scoring 40 points and above was absolutely no problem at all. 30 points. This was the lowest score which had not been seen for several years. Tang Jinhua was worried that once the score was announced, it would affect Bai Ruoli's reputation and had intentionally not announced it earlier. Wasn't this also for the fact that she was young sect master's fiancé? Towards normal people, he wouldn't even bother to help them hide their score. Whoever knew that not only did this young lass not appreciate his goodwill, she even hounded him for her score. Ari, now that things had come to this, there was no way to hide it any further. Huang Yueli asked unbelievably, wait a minute. Master Tang, why is it that I don't understand what you're saying? I only scored 30 points. How is that possible? You must have gotten something wrong somewhere. Could it be that my paper was mixed up with someone else's? What kind of joke was that? Just a simple theory paper which didn't require any technological content. She actually scored 30 points. Honestly speaking, when she was writing the paper, she indeed hadn't been too serious and could not guarantee that she did everything correctly, so scoring full marks was not possible. But just this kind of difficulty, scoring 95 points, was an easy feat for her, so how was it possible that she only scored 30 points? If this news reached Soaring Heavens Continent's Armament Guild headquarters, probably everyone would laugh their teeth off. A 9th-tier armament master like her actually failed at a 1st-tier armament master certification assessment paper. Tang Jinhua hadn't got the time to say anything when Li Shuai already couldn't help herself from sneering. You can also listen on. Bai Ruoli, aren't you just too funny? 30 points is 30 points. Your standard is just that much and everyone knows about it, so what excuses are you going to find for yourself? The Armament Guild is absolutely fair. Do you think everyone is that free to intentionally go around framing you? For that instant, Huang Yueli had thought that Li Shuai had done something to her paper. But when she looked at Li Shuai's shocked and joyful expression, it seemed like it wasn't really like that. Moreover, the Armament Guild's influence was very great, and just basing on Li Shuai's status and ability, she indeed did not have the means to bribe everyone in the Armament Guild. Huang Yueli didn't bother about Li Shuai but emphasized once again towards Tang Jinhua, Master Tang, I wish to apply for a recheck on my paper to see what went wrong with my paper. I am certain that my score wouldn't just be 30 marks that low. There must be some accidental incident happening. Tang Jinhua was put in a difficult position. Miss Bai, our Armament Guild certification assessment had never made the exception to recheck anyone's paper. Moreover, every single paper had not been marked only by one armament master but had been accessed by 3 different powers armament masters to examine before deriving at the final score. This is an absolutely fair system and there will not be any mistakes occurring. When Huang Yueli heard what he said, she started to frown. According to Tang Jinhua's explanation, the system of marking the papers had indeed been thoroughly thought through and theoretically speaking, there shouldn't be any mistakes at all. But her assessment results was simply too ridiculous. Master Tang, I'm not sure what happened exactly, but I can guarantee that my score in this round of theory assessment could not possibly be that low. There must have been a problem when the paper was marked. If you don't believe what I said, then take my paper out to take a look and you will know. This, I say, Bai Ruoli, how could you even have the nerve to suggest this? I have really never seen someone so shameless like you. You couldn't get any good scoring and is not able to pass the assessment, then just admit that your own standard is too low. Why must you insist that the teachers who marked the paper have a problem? Hehe, I'm telling you, the Armament Guild have never made any mistakes before, so the person who is in the wrong is definitely you. Li Shuai looked at her in high spirits and her tone was filled with ridicule and taunting. Oh, I know. Is it because you'd made a bet with me and not happy that you lost, worried that you'd be at my disposal and be in deep *T, so that's why you're hanging on like that, refusing to admit your defeat? But no matter what reason you find, a loss is a loss. Do you think that dragging on a bit more time could change anything? In the end, won't you still have to kneel down beside me and listen to my orders? The more Li Shuai said, the happier she got, and if it wasn't for so many people present, she would not be able to stop herself from dancing. Usually she had been pinned down by Huang Yueli, as every single challenge she threw out had been thrown back right at her fiercely. It was finally now that she felt exuberant. To be able to see Huang Yueli's reputation reached an all-time low and be viciously fixed by her, she really could laugh even in her dreams. Huang Yueli turned her head around and threw her an icy cold glance. Li Shuai shuddered uncontrollably when she saw her substantial glance fixed onto herself. Huang Yueli's gaze was simply too cold, too icy, and even held some traces of a superior's pressure, making Li Shuai's legs turned into jelly. What are you thinking of doing? I'm warning you, you agree to bet, you accept to lose. Earlier you had agreed personally on this bet, so are you trying to disavow now? You can also listen on. Huang Yueli replied, the things that I had agreed on, I will never disavow on it. But now the results are not out yet. On the contrary, senior sister Li, remember what you said earlier. If you lose, don't eat your own words. Li Shuai sneered, why are you still trying to pretend? You're definitely going to lose and still deliberately mystifying the whole matter. Huang Yueli didn't bother about her as she turned towards Tang Jinhua and raised out her request again. Tang Jinhua was still hesitating but suddenly felt an icy cold feeling coming from his back. He subconsciously turned around only to discover that Li Moying was seated on the VIP seating, using his pair of icy and stern peach blossom eyes staring intently over this side. His cold thin lips were slightly pursed and his face had been tainted with a tinge of fury. Jiang Tuxin saw him, turned his head back and hurriedly made a hand gesture at him. In principle, Jiang's heart, he was already scolding him upside down. What situation was it now? This Tang Jinhua still didn't know how to behave like a person. Armament masters are indeed all bookworms and not reliable at all. Couldn't he see that young sect master had already gone on a rage? Why didn't he understood what Miss Bai said and let her recheck her paper? Just how much trouble was that? As for whether it was fair or not, could it even be compared to young sect master's rage? Tang Jinhua sighed again, as he indeed had other considerations in his mind, because this wasn't Celestial Light Academy's own assessment but had involved the Armament Guild as well. President who chose to open his mouth at the right moment. This is the first time I've met anyone who feels that the Armament Guild is unfair. Generally speaking, the certification assessment indeed does not allow a recheck of papers, but on account of Celestial Light Sect, we will allow Miss Bai a chance to recheck her paper. But I have to put the ugly words first. If the result of the recheck shows that there isn't any problem with the marking, then Miss Bai will have to accept the result of being eliminated. We cannot lower the standard of our certification assessment. President, whose words were meant for Li Moying's ears. To give Celestial Light Sect's young sect master's fiancée face to recheck her paper wasn't that much of a big deal. President who wasn't that rigid, and moreover he was certain that the Armament Guild would not possibly make any mistakes, so this was just a passing scenario and it would also make Li Moying owe them a favor, so why not? He was worried that Li Moying would make use of Celestial Light Sect's power and request him to certify Huang Yueli as an exception. In this way, it would indeed damage the Armament Guild's reputation. Li Moying nodded his head, this will do, thank you President Hu for being accommodative. President Hu heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that although this young sect master looked overbearing and stern, but he was still rather reasonable. How on earth would he even guessed that it was because Li Moying had already affirmed that his little fox's exceptional ability in armament refining and was able to use her own capability to resolve this matter, which led him to say these. If that wasn't the case, what other things would Li Moying not do to win his fiancée's heart? Tang Jinhua obtained the president's approval, and without further consideration, he immediately said, "Right, since Miss Bai had requested once again, then we shall make an exception and allow you to do a recheck. Will the three masters who marked Bai Ruoli's examination script please bring out her paper?" Finding the paper required a bit of time, so Huang Yueli and the rest of them stood on the stage waiting. The students at the spectators' seating were already bustling, guessing what was the result of this recheck. Most of them thought that Huang Yueli's recheck was a complete waste of time. She originally wasn't an armament apprentice, so scoring 30 marks was very normal. Her own standard was too low, so how could she even blame the Armament Guild for that? You can also listen on. After the recheck was done, there would definitely not be any mistakes in the score, whereas she would be slapped on the face. Just thinking about it made one ashamed and unable to show their face. Only Su Qingyu, Yu Xinyang, and some others were confident in Huang Yueli and were defending her among the crowd. What makes you think that junior sister Bai would be slapped on the face? Perhaps there really are errors in the paper. That's right, I believe junior sister Bai will not do things which she isn't confident about. Since she already said that, then she must have absolute confidence in her own ability, knowing that her scoring shouldn't be that low. Unfortunately, these words only led to a gust of ridicule. Enough of that. We all know you're on Bai Ruoli's side, but how could you speak blindly? That's right, just based on the fact that Bai Ruoli isn't even an armament apprentice, she couldn't possibly obtain any high score. Li Shuera was following closely beside Huang Yueli as she smiled and said, "Junior sister Bai, now you have attained your wish and Master Tang has allowed you to recheck your paper. When the paper is shown to everyone, that score is akin to nailing it onto the board. By then you'd have no way of denying further." That's right. By then there is no way of denying, so senior sister Li better start thinking about your route to run around naked. Huang Yueli replied immodestly. Li Shuera had wanted to say more things but stopped on seeing a middle-aged armament master dressed in the armament master's long robe with a second-tier armament master badge pinned onto his chest, walking up the stage with quick steps. "Master Tang, Bai Ruoli's paper have been found." "Master Yu, thank you for your trouble." Tang Jinhua nodded his head in reply. Master Yu slapped the paper onto the table with a loud bam as his expression wasn't too good. "It's not too much trouble. But this is an insult to us armament masters. She actually don't believe the scoring which the three of us came out with. Alright, then see for yourself and let the others here take a look as well. Who is right and who is wrong? Earlier I had also reassessed the paper with the other two masters, 30 points. Is absolutely correct. Armament masters had always been held in high regard by others and their original selves were rather proud. Moreover, Huang Yueli had questioned their professionalism, so it's no wonder that Master Yu was so angry. Tang Jinhua hurriedly placated him. "Men, quickly serve Master Yu tea. Master Yu, please stay calm. Miss Bai has just started learning the art of armament refining and is still a beginner. So she might not know how things work around here. If there's anything that she had done to offend you, please don't take it up with this young lady." Master Yu humped heavily, apparently not appeased at all. Tang Jinhua retrieved the paper but didn't immediately announce the results. Instead he looked speedily at the answers inside. The more he saw, the more discouraged he felt. Because after looking at the answers which Huang Yueli wrote, he discovered that what Master Yu and the others said were all correct. This paper's score was indeed only worth 30 points. How was he going to deal with this? He had thought that this young lass had insisted on checking the paper again because she had some other basis. Even if she could not obtain the passing mark of 60 points, at least it should raise the score by at least 8 or 10 points, right? Whoever knew that she really only had the standard of 30 points, no more or no less. If he were to announce this to all the students present, it was imaginable that Huang Yueli would entirely become a laughingstock today. This young lass's reputation wasn't much to speak about, but if young sect master were to take out his anger on him, what should he do? Tang Jinhua shook as he held the paper in his hands as sweat started to appear profusely on his forehead. You can also listen on. Li Shuer noticed that there was no activity from him and she urged, "Master, what are the contents written on the paper? Announce it out and let everyone judge it together." Tang Jinhua stared at this disciple of his, feeling that she really had no vision at all. Hadn't she noticed that he didn't want to announce it at all? And yet she actually jumped out to undermine him. However, what made Tang Jinhua even more speechless was that Huang Yueli herself actually jumped out too. Master Tang, what on earth is going on? Let me take a look at the paper. Tang Jinhua was left helpless as he could only pass the paper over to Huang Yueli, not forgetting to console her at the same time. Miss Bai, there really isn't any notable errors in the marking of the script, so you need not feel too discouraged. In the past you aren't even an armament apprentice, so obtaining this score is already. That's what I was saying, there must be some errors in the marking here. Moreover, this is ridiculously wrong. I say, who was the one who marked this paper? How can they anyhow mark it? Isn't there any justice at all? Moreover, the standard is simply too low. Before Tang Jinhua had completed his sentence, Huang Yueli had already scanned through her entire paper and started to furiously accuse the markers. Oh, really? Tang Jinhua was stunned and thought that he had seen wrongly as he hurriedly withdrew the paper back and took another look at it. But there still wasn't any wrong. This paper was at most only worth 30 points. He used his 4th-tier armament master badge to swear that he absolutely had not seen anything wrong with the paper. Master Yu, who had marked the paper, also closed in, and upon taking one look at the paper, he was so angry that he almost jumped up as his entire face flushed red with anger. Why, you? Bai Ruoli. Are you blind? Where is the error on this paper? We had looked at every single answer carefully, and right is right whereas wrong is wrong. All the answers can be found on the foundation of the armament refining ancient records. Really? But the marks awarded here is obviously incorrect. Although I had indeed not put in too much effort while doing this paper. For example, this last question here. I was too lazy to write too much and skipped some steps instead, and you've deducted 5 points from here. This I can still accept. But how about the earlier ones here? Are these answers not correct? What right do you have to deduct my points? And moreover, you've deducted so much. Huang Yueli stretched out her delicate finger and pointed through those questions one after another. Master Yu followed the direction which she pointed at and was so angry that he stared daggers at her and blasted his beard. How is it correct? You dare to claim that you're correct? It's obviously all wrong. And it's all ridiculously wrong, yet you still dare to twist your words and force logic on it. Did you think I'm suffering from amnesia? I'm telling you, your petty tricks has no effect on me. I've become an armament master for 20 years already, so do you think I'd get such basic logic wrong? The two of them were locked in a heated argument as Li Shuer walked over and took a look at the paper. Just looking at the first few questions, she already couldn't help but starting bursting out in laughter. I say, Bai Ruoli, you really are. Really too shameless. These are obviously all wrong, and yet you still dare to accuse the marker? Who gave you the guts and confidence to do so? I know you're afraid of being eliminated and worried that you'd lose the bet you have with me, but pestering in this manner is useless and will only reduce you to become Celestial Light Academy's laughingstock. The spectators below the stage were also bursting out. What's the situations now? Is Bai Ruoli's score correct or wrong? Is there a need to ask? The truth is right before us. Haven't you seen Master Tang, Master Yu, and Li Shuer all said the same thing? Bai Ruoli had answered all the questions wrongly, and the score on that paper is absolutely correct. You can also listen on. Since the armament masters have already said so, what is Bai Ruoli still arguing about? Does she feel that she has not been embarrassed enough? If I were her, I'd already have dug a hole in the ground and hidden it. That's right. How does she even have the courage of her convictions to stand on the stage? Surely senior brother Li's face have all been thrown away with such a fiancé. Li Shuer laughed so much until she almost couldn't stand up straight when she heard what the others were discussing below the stage. She had never expected that wretched lass to be so dumb. At this point in time, she was still making herself hang on tight in spite of adversity, and this only made her even more embarrassed. Huang Yueli frowned slightly, not understanding what the situation was becoming. She had answered the questions herself and had an amount of certainty in her mind, so naturally there wouldn't be any mistakes. But since so many armament masters said that she was wrong, Huang Yueli suddenly thought of something as she pointed her finger on the first fill-in-the-blank question. You say I answered wrongly, then let me ask you. This question regarding the steps on refining the impurities in the Scarlet Thunder steel, how many steps were there altogether? I wrote 3 steps, so in what way am I wrong? In what way are you wrong? 3 steps. Are you making a mistake somewhere? Scarlet Thunder steel is a second-tier armament refining material, and moreover it had always been associated with the other metal attributes, so there are many different varieties of impurities in it. Using 3 steps alone, and you want to refine all of the impurities? Are you thinking too much? You'd need at least 5 steps. Li Shuer laughed exaggeratedly. Master Yu also cried out, the correct answer to this question is 5 step. It's been recorded in so many basic armament refining ancient record. It's a well-known standard method. The corners of Huang Yueli's mouth twitched slightly, and without saying anything else, she pointed to the next question. How about this? In order to fuse 2 different metal attributes together, how many types of hand gestures are required? I wrote 11 types, so why is this wrong? Li Shuer snatched to answer again. 11 types? What kind of joke is that? There is a total of 7 types only. Do you treat hand gestures as buying vegetables in the market? You want how many and you'd get how many? There's just merely 7 types, and these total were accumulated since several hundred years ago from all the senior armament masters. 11 types. What are those extra 4 types? Why don't you do it and show us? When Master Yu heard her reply, he unexpectedly revealed a satisfied expression. Not bad, Miss Li is really an experienced armament apprentice. Your basic knowledge is very sound. Miss Bai, I've heard that you're one of Celestial Light Academy's cultivation talents and your power is very strong, but this does not mean that you can insult us armament masters. Now that the truth has been revealed and had proven that you've answered wrongly while the fault does not lie with us Armament Guild, what else do you have to say? Master Yu stood up in a towering figure and looked down towards Huang Yueli, his tone tinged with contempt. To actually humiliate the valuable armament master, this matter was not going to pass by easily. When Tang Jinhua saw this, he hurried over and persuaded, all right, Master Yu, I've already told you that this young lass is still young and ignorant, so don't hold it against her. Let's just let today's matter pass and treat that I owe you a favor. All right, now that the first round of assessment has ended, those who had passed hurry over and prepare for the next round of assessment. As Tang Jinhua was saying this, he was expressing Huang Yueli to get off the stage quickly, attempting to turn big problems into small ones and small ones into no problems at all. But not only did Huang Yueli refuse to step down, instead she took a step forward and cried out loudly, wait a minute, this matter had not ended. I finally know why my assessment score is so low. So it's because you're all low-leveled armament masters and have not seen much of the world. Hearing Li Shuer and Master Yu's explanation, Huang Yueli finally understood what had happened. You can also listen on. When Huang Yueli was answering the questions, she had written the answers which she thought was correct, as these were all knowledge which she had acquired from her previous life's master, whereas some were derived during the process based on her hands-on practice. Before this, she had never doubted the problems which these answers would give or how different it would be from the standard answer. Thinking back now, the knowledge she acquired against the few people from the Armament Guild seemed to have a hell of a difference. For example, the question regarding the hand gestures to fuse the metal attributes. 30 years ago, there indeed was only 7 types, but later on in her previous life while she was in Mythical Flame Palace, she had researched another 2 additional hand gestures, and when she became a 9th-tier armament master, she created yet another 2 other hand gestures. Because of that, there was a total of 11 types. The only thing was that these 4 new hand gestures were extremely demanding on the armament master's mental power, so generally speaking, it was impossible for armament masters of 6th tier and below to be able to accomplish it, so there weren't many people who knew about this. From the looks of it, the Armament Guild's basic foundation in the ancient records only recorded those 7 basic types of methods. Huang Yueli felt extremely vexed. She was simply too indifferent to this assessment, thinking that based on her own ability, a mere first-tier armament master assessment should be chicken feet to her. Why would she need to even prepare for it? So she had never even once took a look at the low-tiered armament refining ancient records, hence she had not even considered that this sort of problem would even occur. But now thinking back to this, wasn't it obvious that these low-leveled armament masters' insight and knowledge were different from her, a previous 9th-tier armament master? She should have thought of it long ago. If she had bothered to take a look at one of the ancient records earlier, then this mistake wouldn't have occurred. Unfortunately, it's now all too late for these. She could only use the truth to speak. Huang Yueli immodestly referred the armament masters present as low-leveled armament masters and even said that they have not seen the world. Master Yu and the others had always seen themselves as a proud individual, so since when had they even heard such direct and penetrative reprimand? At that moment, each and every one of their faces turned green with anger. Master Yu had originally despised Huang Yueli, and at this moment, he pounded on the table in fury. "You lass, is that how you talk? I am indeed not some high-leveled armament master, but no matter how less of the world I had seen, I also know the basic foundations of armament refining. What are you? How dare you slander me like that?" When Li Shuer heard what Huang Yueli said, initially she was rendered dumbstruck as well, but very quickly, she started sniggering silently. This wretched lass really knows how to invite death to herself recklessly. She herself insisted on checking the paper, and after being slapped on the face, not only did she refuse to admit her loss, she actually dared to accuse the armament master who marked the paper. Did she really feel that her death wasn't quick enough? Li Shuer kept adding oil to the fire as she said, "Isn't that right, junior sister Bai? How can you behave in this way? The result of the recheck had proven that you're not correct. There is irrefutable evidence and you're still trying to deny. What is that for? They are valuable armament masters and had already wasted their cultivation and armament refining time to help you recheck your paper. Not only are you not grateful to them, you're actually trying to splash dirty water on them. If everyone misunderstood that you're acting against the Armament Guild, then that wouldn't be good for you." Although the words she used was misunderstood, but she actually meant something else. She was actually hinting that Huang Yueli was intentionally going against the Armament Guild, and was trying to challenge the Armament Guild's authority. She wanted Huang Yueli to offend the Armament Guild completely, to offend a huge powerhouse which had a large influence on the entire Soaring Heavens continent. Even Li Moying would not be able to protect her by then. You can also listen on. Those armament masters present immediately got riled up the minute they heard what Li Shuer said, as everyone were infuriated beyond word. That's right, who does this young lass think she is? She's not even an armament apprentice, and she dares to say we have not seen the world. Whoever gave her the courage and whoever gave her the qualification to even dare to let out a spate of nonsense about the Armament Guild? Does she not want to live anymore? Isn't her skin a little too thick? She could not even answer a first-tier armament master paper yet blame us for being low-leveled? Isn't she just too shameless for saying such things? Even Tang Jinhua's expression didn't look too well. Although he had always been standing on Huang Yueli's side, but what was she saying? She had scolded all the armament masters present. Huang Yueli on the other hand remained as per normal as she said indifferently, "My apologies, and it's not that I look down on the Armament Guild, but I'm just merely looking down on those armament masters who have no common sense. Whoever wants to fit into that description, please feel free to do so." Master Yu was so angry that he almost went crazy because he had really never suffered such injustice before. You dare to say that I have no common sense? It's obviously yourself who had answered wrongly. All the questions here are from the same source and are all recorded in the ancient records left behind by various reputable armament masters. Is that so? Then what era are these armament masters from? Some have already passed on for several hundreds of years already, isn't it? You all actually treat the art of refining armament left behind hundreds of years ago as the truth and not knowing how to learn new methods to create new ways to refine armaments, so it's no wonder that you'd always remain as low-leveled armament masters. What do you know? Master Yu blew his beard as his eyes turned wide, furiously staring at her and shouting, "Armament refining skill is originally an ancient and invaluable art, so naturally it will require several thousand years of armament masters to continue this tradition. Our forefathers had left behind these ancient records, and these are all priceless treasures. What new skills, new methods? Who do you think you are? The 11 types of hand gestures fusion or 3 steps to get rid of impurities. I've never heard of it before. Master Yu's figure was tall, and after he got agitated, not only did his face flushed red, he even started shouting and yelling, which became a huge difference against the petite young lady in front of him. This made Huang Yueli appear even more delicate. But an indifferent expression still hung on her face. It's actually very easy to prove if I'm just talking blindly or if you have no common sense. Prove? You're obviously wrong, so how are you trying to prove yourself? Master Yu sneered coldly. Why not we do it this way? I can refine armament on the spot and display those few hand gestures which I had written on my paper, to prove that my answer is right. What did you say? Master Yu had thought he had heard her wrongly and paused for a moment before his eyes widened in disbelief. You say, you're going to publicly display your method of refining armaments here? Huang Yueli nodded. That's right. This is the simplest and fastest way, isn't it? Otherwise you will claim you're right and I insist that I'm right, so if this carries on, when will we ever reach a conclusion? What kind of joke are you saying? Refine armament on the spot? Do you even know how to refine armament? And you even want to display your method publicly? Master Yu didn't know if he should laugh or cry. This young lass in front of her had only scored 30 marks for the theory paper, and with this standard, it was obvious that she knew nothing about armament refining, and she even wanted to refine armaments publicly. He was worried that the minute she started, she would directly blow the furnace up into pieces. You can also listen on. Li Shuer was even more direct, as she couldn't stop sniggering even when she covered her own mouth as she continued, Junior Sister Bai, you really know how to refine armaments. How do you think about it? Or can you demonstrate to us on the spot on how to fuse those hand gestures? 11 types. Sorry for my bluntness, but not to mention 11 types of hand gestures. If you're able to even do one, then I'll kneel down in front of you. Did you think it's so easy to become an armament master? Every single hand gesture requires several months of practice, otherwise it's just impossible to master it. How many days have you just started learning to refine armaments? Huang Yueli shot her glance towards her. If I'm able to display one type of hand gesture, then will you really kneel down in front of me? Li Shuer's face turned back, intuition telling her that something was wrong with this question. This wretched lass had always been abnormal. She naturally would not believe in what 11 hand gestures, but mastering just 1 or 2 types, she probably was able to. She hurriedly changed the topic. Don't be mistaken, I'm doing this for your own good, which is why I'm persuading you now. You've not even touched an armament furnace before, so you probably can't even start the fire, right? Moreover, the 11 hand gestures which you talked about are non-existent, so stop insisting on saying that. It'd only make the others laugh at you. Huang Yueli could tell that she was scared stiff and sneered. How do you know that I've never touched an armament furnace before? I've not even started to demonstrate, so how do you know that 11 types of hand gestures are non-existent? This is originally the truth, so how would I not know? Who's right and who's wrong? Let's let the truth speak for itself. Now that things had gotten to this step, Tang Jinhua felt that he had no way to settle it, so he ran over to the VIP seating and asked for advice from them. Jiang Tuxin and the rest felt that Huang Yueli was reluctant to admit her mistake. The paper had already been rechecked and so many armament masters had already deemed that she was wrong, whereas she was the only one who insisted she was correct. No normal person would believe her, right? He really didn't know what happened to her, as she was usually a smart young lass, but why did she choose to be abnormal today? Just that he couldn't say out these words because Li Moying was just seated beside him. This young sect master, perhaps, can you persuade Miss Bai instead? Jiang Tuxin hesitated for a moment before he opened his mouth. Li Moying kept a cold and indifferent expression while looking towards the stage, and when he heard Jiang Tuxin's words, his eyebrows rose. Persuade her? Why should I persuade her? Jiang Tuxin saw his nonchalant look and grew even more anxious. Young sect master, this cannot continue like this. Although Miss Bai didn't do well this time, but based on her innate talent, if she wanted to learn how to refine armaments, there are plenty of other chances. Why must she persist on that her way is right? Li Moying swept him an icy cold glance as his tone was equally cold. Principal Jiang, I might not understand it well, but from what you mean, you feel that my Leah is wrong. This Jiang Tuxin choked. He naturally thought that Huang Yueli was wrong in his heart, but since Li Moying had already said that, even if he grew 10 more guts, he wouldn't dare to speak his mind. After a while, he finally stifled out a sentence, since Miss Bai said that, she must have her own logic, but in order to debate who is right and who is wrong, it's not realistic. Why is it not realistic? Li Moying asked. Hasn't Leah already said? She can start her furnace and refine armaments on the spot to demonstrate those armament refining hand gestures. Then let her use the truth to speak. But Jiang Tuxin's forehead started to form cold sweat as it started to drip down. Miss Bai's brain wasn't functioning well, but why did young sect master also not get what was happening? You can also listen on. Jiang Tuxin wanted to persuade further when President Hu was sitting by the side, suddenly butted into the conversation. Principal Jiang, since Miss Bai has enough confidence and wanted to display her methods on the spot, now that young sect master Li has also consented, then you should stop objecting further. That's right, the so-called 11 types of hand gestures which are used to fuse metal attributes. We had indeed heard of it but had never seen it personally before. If Miss Bai is able to display it out then towards the armaments masters in Sky Cloud City's branch armament guild is a huge opportunity. President Gong supported his idea. Jiang Tuxin was completely stunned. He had thought that President Hu and President Gong would be the angriest duo around here and had not expected the both of them to say such things. Furthermore, from their expressions, they had totally no trace of fury at all. On the contrary, their expressions seemed to seep out some traces of excitement. Tang Jinhua also noticed that something was wrong as he looked at the two presidents in shock. President Hu, President Gong, you, President Hu smiled. Jinhua, come along and take a careful look. These armament refining methods, even though I had not seen it before and if it wasn't for this occasion, I'm afraid that Miss Bai wouldn't even be willing to publicly display it for everyone to see. Tang Jinhua said, President Hu, your meaning, don't tell me that you feel that Bai Ruoli's answer is right? President Hu played around with his greyish-white beard and replied seemingly in thought, the 11 hand gestures which Miss Bai talked about, I have heard it from someone before but as I had not witnessed it previously, I had always thought it was more likely a rumor and the confirmed hand gestures are only 7 types. But she actually said that she could display it publicly. Could it be that the rumor is not fake? President Gong also responded, earlier President Hu and I had been discussing for quite a bit and we both feel that since Miss Bai had such confidence, then she shouldn't be telling lies. Perhaps she had some extremely incredible master and could understand all these. If she really could display all the 11 hand gestures then that would prove that her master is an armament grandmaster who is much stronger than all of us. Perhaps he is some VIP in the Soaring Heavens Continent's headquarters. President Hu nodded his head, that's right, if she had an incredible master then she should be 90% sure that she could do it. But the only thing is she is still so young, so even if she knew all 11 hand gestures, she would probably not be able to master all. But just seeing the few types of hand gestures which had not been seen before would already be our utmost glory. The both of them were after all 6th tier armament masters and their distance from an armament grandmaster just one step away. Their insight and knowledge were ahead by everyone else's by a huge chunk. They could already tell how extraordinary Huang Yueli was. So although they didn't stop Huang Yueli from displaying publicly, it was not because they wanted her to make a fool of herself but actually wanted to secretly learn her skills. Tang Jinhua became dumbstruck, not expected that the two armament masters whom he had admired the most actually felt that Huang Yueli was right. And moreover, they even gave her such a high valuation. This young lass's master was an even more incredible armament master than President Hu. How was that possible? Hadn't she came from a small country like South Yu Kingdom? President Hu urged, why are you still standing around here for? Quickly invite Miss Bai to display her hand gestures. He really couldn't wait to learn from her. Oh, right. Tang Jinhua speedily ran back to the stage. After the verification from President Hu and President Gong from the Armament Guild, they have agreed to Miss Bai's request to display publicly and now, would like to invite Miss Bai up on stage. You can also listen on. Li Shuai sniggered secretly as she called out, Junior Sister Bai, My master had already agreed to let you display publicly, so what are you waiting for? This is your own request, so don't regret it. Huang Yueli gave a cold harumph, and not saying anything further, she walked up directly beside Tang Jinhua. When the armament masters saw her on stage, they started to ridicule her. She actually dared to go up. Simply don't know what's good for her. Hehe, I must see for myself. How is she going to come out with 11 hand gestures? Let's see how she's prepared to finish up. Tang Jinhua went up beside Huang Yueli and lowered his voice. Miss Bai, we have a collection of different armament furnaces here in Celestial Light Academy's profound weapon chambers, so if you have any special requests, let me know and I'll get them to get it out from the story. Li Shuer had not expected Tang Jinhua to speak so politely, and even with a feeling of respect as her eyes opened wide in surprise. What was the situation? Could Master be ridiculing this wretched lass? Could it be that she had heard him wrongly? And he even allowed her to choose any armament furnace. The storage collections were all quality goods. Previously she had wanted to choose one but was rejected by Tang Jinhua, saying that only after she had become a first-tier armament master then would she be able to apply for one. Why is it that this wretched lass could casually choose one? However, what made her even more surprised was Huang Yueli actually didn't accept his offer but shook her head and said, "No need, I have prepared my own armament furnace." Saying that, she waved her hand and took out a broken armament furnace from the Sky Phoenix ring. Li Shuer took a close look at it and almost laughed out. I say, Junior Sister Bai, this armament furnace of yours, isn't it just a little too broken? So many areas on the exterior of the furnace had already rusted and the patterns are already so blurred. I wonder if it's still usable? Tang Jinhua also frowned. Miss Bai, this armament furnace of yours is indeed a little too old and I'm afraid it wouldn't be too easy to use, so why not just change one? Huang Yueli shook her head. No need, I've been using this for a very long time and if it was other armament furnaces, it might not be as handy as this. Tang Jinhua saw that he wasn't able to persuade her, so he could only retreat to one side. When Li Moying saw the armament furnace which Huang Yueli took out, he couldn't help but smile. On that handsome and icy cold face, it revealed some tinges of gentleness. He recalled that this armament furnace was the one which he and Huang Yueli had obtained in Dark Moon Forest, and at that time, this furnace had sealed a half-god relic, the Amethyst Lightsword. Huang Yueli had used quite an amount of effort to retrieve the half-god relic, but in the end the Amethyst Lightsword's spirit artifact, Little Lilac, only recognized him as her master, which made his little fox throw a huge tantrum. Recalling that now, he distinctly remembered the way his little thing threw her temper, that cute look. An armament furnace which was able to seal a half-god relic, it was definitely not something ordinary. President, who was one who knew how to recognize valuable items and knew that since Huang Yueli brought out this armament furnace at this occasion, it was certainly not as broken as it appeared to be. But after looking at it for some time, he could not tell what material was this armament furnace made out of, nor tell what the uses of the patterns which were inscribed on could do. Because of that, Huang Yueli became even more mysterious in his eyes. Huang Yueli set up the armament furnace and rubbed away the dust on it. Following that, she pointed with her finger and a small amethyst ray flame shot out from her fingertip and flew into the bottom part of the armament furnace's fire entrance. A loud boom reverberated. A small ball of flame, upon entering the fire entrance, instantly grew and became a raging ball of fire, wrapping the entire armament furnace in its flame. You can also listen on. Furthermore, among the flames, a purplish bolt which could be seen flashing, giving off a chafing sound. The might of that flame was astonishing. Huang Yueli controlled the intensity of the fire with a point of her finger. Under her control, the monstrous deviant flame was tamed and became obedient as it started to form into a dark purplish-colored flame, entering the fire entrance. All the spectators were stunned upon seeing this. Especially among those armament masters who were still jeering at Huang Yueli for bringing out such a run-down armament furnace. Before their laughter had actually stopped, suddenly, they saw this shocking scene. Their jaws almost dropped down onto the ground in shock. Look, that ball of purplish flame, how could the intensity of the fire be so strong? Surely it can't be. A deviant flame? It's not possible, right? I've never seen a deviant flame before. Even our president himself doesn't have any deviant flame sparks, isn't it? She's merely a young lass who's not even an armament apprentice. How could she possibly have one? But, the flame that she has is very familiar. I seem to have seen it somewhere. I have the same impression too. In the deviant flame pictorial, there indeed has a kind of purplish thunder attributed deviant flame. I think it's called amethyst thunder flame. That really looks like it. But, sure not right? How could it be possible? On the VIP seating, President Hu and President Gong were so excited that they almost jumped out of their seats. It's the amethyst thunder flame, it really is. Heavens, this Miss Bai's background is not as simple as we think. She actually has a deviant flame. How on earth did she get it? Just how strong is the existence of the influence behind her? Li Moying's lips curled upwards complacently as his gaze was affixed on Huang Yueli, who was on stage. Whenever his little fox started to refine armaments, she would be exceptionally absorbed into it, but he especially liked watching her attentive look. Every time this happened, Li Moying would had an illusion as though he had always been watching Huang Yueli refine armaments, and moreover he had already watched her for a long, long time. No matter how many times he watched, he would not get sick of it. Huang Yueli controlled the amethyst thunder flame and heated up the armament furnace. Just as the body of the furnace started to appear a dark red glow, with a lift of her hand, she struck out a stream of methodical gesture as the furnace lid gradually flew upwards and landed on the side. A large piece of scarlet thunder steel and another large piece of white moon iron were placed beside her. These two were the most commonly seen materials among the low-tiered materials, and Tang Jinhua got his staff to bring it out. Firstly, she placed the scarlet thunder steel into the armament furnace, and following that, she controlled the deviant flame and started refining. The armament masters looked at her well-trained skill and started to realize that she was truly a top expert. But following her continuous refining, some of them started to mumble. What's going on? Why didn't she put the lid on? That's right, leaving the lid open will cause a drop in the temperature within the armament furnace, so how could she even refine the impurities? Isn't she just unruly? Does she even know how to refine armaments? I don't even understand what she's doing. Just as everyone were in a daze, Huang Yueli suddenly spoke. All right everyone, look carefully now. I'm going to start refining the impurities. Earlier Master Yu said a second-tier material like the scarlet thunder steel had many impurities and will need 5 steps to refine all the impurities. But in actual fact, only 3 steps will do. But you must first control the flame's intensity and temperature precisely. As Huang Yueli explained, she started to operate. First step, second step, third step. Following the various hand gestures which kept flying out from her fingers, the scarlet thunder steel had been ablated under the deviant flame's high temperature into a liquid form, and the impurities within it were removed. The scarlet thunder steel's color also became deeper and deeper, and finally it turned into a vermilion cinnabar-like color. You can also listen on. Those armament masters present were all stunned, not daring to believe in what they had just seen. Heavens, it's really possible. It really only needed 3 steps. How is that possible? How did she do it? This new method is simply unheard of. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I'd never believe it at all. 3 steps, it really only needed 3 steps. So what Bai Ruoli said was really true. The people who were wrong are us. What should we do now? I really have no face to see anyone. The armament masters looked at each other with their red faces, feeling extremely ashamed. This was simply a hard slap across their faces. Earlier those armament masters who claimed that Huang Yueli's answer was absolutely wrong could not accept this result. Even when Huang Yueli suggested that she could refine on the spot to verify her answer was correct, they had deemed her as an abnormality, ridiculing her with various words. But how about now? The truth had proved itself that what Huang Yueli said was absolutely correct. When she said these armament masters had not seen the worth, it was absolutely correct. Everyone was embarrassed but couldn't bear to move their gazes away as all of them opened their eyes wide, staring at Huang Yueli without blinking, worried that they would miss a single action that she made. This new method which they had never seen before was definitely high-leveled, and looking at the speed which Huang Yueli moved to remove the impurities, the effect was much higher than how they usually did by several times. This unique method would not be shared by most people usually, but now in order to prove herself, Huang Yueli actually displayed her skills on the spot. This once-in-a-lifetime opportunity made everyone held their breaths as they wanted to master this unique skill. Even if they didn't manage to learn it on the spot, at least they should gain some knowledge out of this, right? However, the truth made them hugely disappointed. A bunch of armament masters opened their eyes so wide that it was almost popping out, but only managed to see the vague traces of Huang Yueli's fingers moving in midair. What situation is this? Why am I unable to see clearly? I didn't manage to see clearly too. The speed of her hands are simply too fast. I'm totally unable to differentiate which hand gestures she uses. That's right, it's simply too fast. How could she possibly be so fast? I've already tried my hardest usually, but the speed of my hand gestures could only hit less than 1/3 of her speed. Moreover, she's so precise and yet she's not even making a single mistake. Armament masters, in the process of displaying their hand gestures continually, must not make any mistake at all, because in the hundreds of hands gestures, as long as one hand gesture was wrong, the entire refining process would be halted in the process. To the numerous profound weapons, as long as the refining process was halted, the final product would have an obvious blemish and it might even lead to exploding on the spot. But now, within the armament furnace, the impurities in that large piece of scarlet thunder steel were being removed at a speed which the naked eye could see, without any signs of slowing down. This also meant that there wasn't a single mistake in Huang Yueli's hand gestures. Under such a fast-paced display, there was no mistake at all. Just based on the skill and control alone, it was something which the armament masters there could not hope to achieve. It was barely time for a pot of tea to brew before the scarlet thunder steel's impurities were all drawn out, leaving purely a vermilion cinnabar-colored liquid in the armament furnace. Furthermore, it was indeed only 3 steps. The speed of this was much faster by several times than the usual 5 steps to remove impurities. You can also listen on. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.